The supplier order was wrong, and the delivery was hours away. Nadine Holloway fixed it alone. She's a black woman, 29, a pastry chef who owns Harper & Bloom Bakery. Flower on her white shirt, tangerine apron tied at her defined waist. Her name is on the loan. Her name is on the door. Then the black overcoat filled the doorway. Kang Min Jae. They call him Snow Wolf. A dark dragon tattoo climbs the left side of his neck, up toward his ear. He offered to make her problem disappear. His way. She said no. This bakery carries a community loan, not mafia pressure. His mother came to approve the menu. Haesuk smiled the way ice smiles. Days later, at the charity tea in the mansion, Nadine stood behind a floral partition. On the other side, Haesuk spoke to 3 women. She said her daughter-in-law stole the donations. She held up a photo of a bank transfer. Nadine lifted her phone and took a picture of the picture. The amount matched something she'd seen before, on the foundation's flower invoices. 10 days until the vote, a partition between her and the lie, and a number that shouldn't have fit, but did. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and click join to become a member and help our channel. The palette of cream cheese was wrong before Nadine even cut the shrink wrap. She knew it the moment she pressed her thumb into the first tub and felt grit where there should have been silk. She peeled the foil back. The surface had separated, a thin bead of water sweating along the edge, the whole batch broken from a freeze it never should have taken. She checked the label. Then she checked the invoice taped to the pallet. They matched. The problem was the product, not the paperwork, and the product was ruined. Behind her, the ovens ticked. 240 individual cheesecakes were due at the Whitmore Foundation Gala by 6 that evening, and it was already past 9 in the morning, and the base that held the entire order together was sitting in front of her, turning to curdled soup. "Marisol," she called, "don't start the crusts." Marisol froze with a tray of spring-form pans halfway to the counter. "How bad?" "Bad." Nadine wiped her thumb on her apron, the tangerine cotton catching a smear of white. She lifted a second tub, a third, a fourth, cracking each lid, hunting for even one crate that had survived. None had. The whole delivery had gone through a cold snap in transit, someone's refrigeration unit stuck too low overnight, and now $900 of cheese was garbage. She set the last tub down without slamming it. Slamming things cost time. "Call Delgado's," she said. "Ask if they can pull 40 pounds of full-fat, block form, not whipped. Tell them it's me. Tell them today. They open at 10. Then call at 10. Nadine was already moving, pulling her phone from her apron pocket, thumbing to the supplier's number. She dialed the account rep, the one who'd sworn to her 3 weeks ago that a repeat of the November mess would never happen. It rang 4 times and dumped her into voicemail. She did not leave a message. She hung up and dialed the warehouse line instead. A man answered on the second ring, chewing something. "Northgate Dairy. This is Nadine Holloway, Harper & Bloom Bakery, account 419. You delivered a broken pallet this morning. Temperature abused, the whole thing separated. I need a credit and I need to know if you have replacement stock on a truck that can reach me by noon." The chewing stopped. "Ma'am, I'd have to check with them while I hold." She held. She walked the length of her own kitchen while she held, past the proofing rack, past the wall where the community loan certificate hung in a plain black frame beside her business license. Harper & Bloom, her grandmother's maiden name, and the flower her mother had grown on the fire escape. Nadine had put both on the door because the bank had put nothing on the table, and the neighborhood credit union had. 14 families had co-signed a piece of what she owed. Every one of them ate here. The man came back. "We can do the credit. Truck's the problem. Nearest replacement stocks in a Thursday route. Today's Tuesday." "Yes, ma'am." "That's not going to work for me." She stopped at the window that faced the alley, where the morning light came in gray and flat. "Here's what's going to happen. I'll source it myself and I'll send you the receipt, and you'll credit the difference on top of the credit for the ruined pallet. This is the second time in a year. There won't be a third, because after tonight I'll be shopping your competitor, and I'll tell every baker on this side of the river why. Do we understand each other?" A pause. "I'll note the account. Note it in writing. Email, today." She ended the call and lowered the phone, and stood there a second, breathing, letting the number settle in her chest. 900 gone, another 1,200 if Delgado's charged her rush rates on block cheese, and no gala fee that came close to covering both. She'd eat the loss. She'd eaten worse. Marisol was watching her from the crust station. Well? They're useless. Get me Delgado's the second they pick up, and start the gram. We can build crusts blind. The base doesn't care what fills it yet. You want to call Aunt Ray? She's got a van? Not yet. Nadine tied her apron tighter and rolled her sleeves past the elbow. Let's see how much of this we can carry ourselves first. They worked. Nadine mixed graham and butter and sugar by feel, pressing crusts into 240 pans with the heel of her hand, one after another, a rhythm she could keep while her mind ran the math 3 moves ahead. If Delgado's came through by noon, she could temper the cheese by 1, bake in staggered racks by 2, chill on the blast freezer by 4, plate and box by 5, load by 5:15. It was thin. It was possible. Possible was all she'd ever needed. A knock came at the locked front door. Not the bell. Knuckles on glass. Nadine looked up and saw Mr. Okafor cupping his hands to the window, his newspaper tucked under one arm, and she crossed and turned the bolt and let him lean his head in. "You're not open," he said, pleased to have caught her out. "Lights are on." "We're baking, Mr. Okafor. Big order." "I only came for the seed loaf. Ray said Tuesdays you do the seed loaf." He was 81 and he came 3 mornings a week, and he'd been the 4th signature on the credit union sheet. $40 a month, he could barely spare, put down against a bakery he believed in, before it had sold a single thing. No seed loaf today. But she held up a finger, went back, and came out with 2 of yesterday's honey rolls wrapped in paper. "On the house, because you walked up the hill." He took them and didn't argue, which for Mr. Okafor was affection. "Big order for who?" "The Whitmore people." 400 plates. 400. He whistled through the gap in his teeth. "You hear that? Whole neighborhood eats tonight. You put us on the map, girl." He tapped the doorframe twice, a small blessing, and shuffled off with his rolls, and Nadine bolted the door behind him and stood a moment with her hand flat on the glass. 400 plates, 14 signatures, 1 name on the door. She went back to the crusts. The bell over the front door chimed at 10 past 10. "We're not open," Marisol called toward the front without looking up. "He's not a customer," Nadine said. She'd heard the door. She'd heard, under the chime, the particular weight of a step she knew, and she set down the crust she was pressing and wiped her hands slowly, because she wanted them clean and steady for this, and not because she needed the extra second. Minjay came through the swinging door into the kitchen like he owned the hinges. He always did that, walked into her space as if the walls would rearrange to make room, and the maddening thing was that they mostly did. 6'2" in a black suit with the top buttons open, the dark coat still on his shoulders though the kitchen was warm. The dragon at the left side of his throat showed above his collar when he turned his head. "You didn't answer your phone," he said. "I was on it. With people who wasted my morning." She picked the crust back up. "How did you know something was wrong?" "Marisol texted my driver." Nadine looked at Marisol. Marisol looked at the gram. "She shouldn't have," Nadine said. She was worried. Minjay came to the counter and looked at the broken tubs stacked by the sink, and something moved behind his eyes, quiet and precise. The look he got right before he decided a thing was a problem that belonged to him. "Northgate Dairy." "Don't." "I didn't say anything." "You read the label and you got that face." She pressed a crust flat, turned the pan, set it on the rack. "I know that face." He picked up one of the ruined tubs, turned it, read the lot number stamped on the bottom, set it down. "They've done this before. November. You told me." "I told you as a story, not as a job. It could be handled by tonight, all of it. The credit, the replacement, a standing account that never fails you again." He said it evenly, the way another man might offer to jump a dead battery. "1 call. They'd be at your door in an hour with better stock than they've ever sent, and they'd apologize while they unloaded it." "And what would that cost me?" "Nothing. It costs them." He set the tub down and turned to face her fully. "A man I know owns the freight line Northgate leases. 1 conversation. Not a threat. An arrangement. Your pallets ride in the front of the truck. First off at every stop. Temperature logged to your phone. You never think about cheese again. And the next baker down the line rides in the back, in the warm, because I jumped the queue. That baker isn't my wife. That's the whole problem, Minjae. She pressed a crust flat. You'd bend the world an inch to spare me an afternoon, and you'd call it love, and it is love, and I still can't take it. It costs me the next time someone in this neighborhood asks how Harper and Bloom keeps its shelves full. She set the pan down harder than the last one. It costs me the answer being your name instead of mine. Minjae went still. He had a way of going still that filled a room more than shouting would have. You'd rather lose money. I'd rather owe it to a bank and a credit union and 14 families whose signatures are on my wall than owe one favor to whatever it is you'd have to lean on to get me cheese by noon. She met his eyes. This place has my name on the door. Just mine. That was the deal. That's still the deal. The deal, he said, was that I don't interfere, not that I watch you drown and call it respect. I'm not drowning. I've got Delgado's. Delgado's is closed. Delgado's opens in. She glanced at the clock over the door. Now, Marisol, call them. Marisol already had the phone to her ear. Minjae watched Nadine cross to the mixer, and he didn't move to help, because he'd learned that much at least, that helping in the wrong way was the fastest route out of this kitchen. But his jaw was tight. You let me buy you a building, he said. You let me co-sign nothing, put my name on nothing, and I agreed, because you asked. But there's a difference between independence and pride, Nadine. There's a difference between a husband and a fixer. She flicked the mixer on, then off, testing the paddle. I didn't marry the snow wolf. I married a man who takes his coat off when he sits down. So take your coat off, or go stand somewhere I'm not about to swing a 40-pound bag. Pride, he said again, quieter. Roots. She turned to him. You grew up with people who moved when you looked at them. I grew up with people who moved because we all pushed the same cart up the same hill. When something breaks, I fix it with the hands I've got, in front of everyone, so nobody ever gets to say Harper and Bloom stands on anything but its own 2 feet. The day it stands on yours, it stops being mine. And the day it stops being mine, I stop being the woman you married. She let that settle. You don't want that woman, trust me. For a second, neither of them spoke. Then slowly, Minjae shrugged the dark coat off his shoulders and folded it over the back of the stool by the wall, and sat, and the boss went somewhere else and left the man behind. It was the only concession he knew how to make, and he made it every time, and she loved him for the size of the effort even when she wouldn't say so before noon. Delgado's has the block, Marisol announced, palm over the phone. 40 pounds. But they want cash, and they want someone to pick it up. They can't spare a driver. How much? 14 a pound plus a rush handling. He's saying 700, 750. Nadine did the math without wincing where anyone could see. Tell him yes. Tell him I'll have someone there in 30 minutes. I'll go, Minjae said, standing. You'll go as yourself. Cash, receipt. You carry it out the front door like a person. You don't say a word about who you are. I'm capable of buying cheese, Nadine. You're capable of a lot of things. That's what worries me. But she was already peeling bills off the roll she kept in the coffee tin, counting 800 into his hand, and he took it without comment, and for a moment their fingers were both on the money, and neither let go. Let me help you the small way, he said quietly, since you won't let me help the large one. She let go of the money. Buying cheese is the small way. Go. He went. He put the coat back on at the door, because the snow wolf did not walk down a public street in shirt sleeves, and she watched the dragon disappear under the collar as he turned, and then he was gone, and the bell chimed behind him, and the kitchen was hers again. You're hard on him, Marisol said. I'm exactly as hard on him as this place needs me to be. Nadine went back to the crusts. Start the water bath. We're baking the second he's back. The next hour was pans and pressure. Nadine built crusts and lined sheet trays and set the blast freezer and checked the ovens twice, and the whole time a clock ran behind her eyes, and it was nearly 11:30, and the crusts were done and cooling, and there was nothing left to do but wait for the cheese when the bell chimed again. It wasn't Minjae. He'd have come through the back. Nadine knew before she pushed through the swinging door who it would be, because there was a particular quality to the silence that followed this particular chime, a stiffening in the air, and she was right. Kang Hae-suk stood just inside the front of the shop with her handbag held in both hands in front of her like a shield, or a verdict. Umeoni, Nadine said. Mother. She said it the way she'd been taught, and she watched it land on the older woman and changed nothing. I've come about the menu. Hae-suk's eyes moved across the shop, across the clean cases and the flowers in the window and the framed loan certificate on the wall, and catalogued each thing and approved of none of it. The gala for the foundation. I want to confirm what my son's wife will be serving under our family's name. Under the Whitmore Foundation's name. They're the client. The Kang family sits on the Whitmore board. A small smile, the kind that cost her nothing and warmed nothing. So it is, in the way that matters, our name. Nadine came around the counter and set 2 menu cards on the glass between them, printed the night before, tangerine ink on cream stock. 240 individual yuzu honey cheesecakes, candied citrus, a gold leaf accent, plated on the foundation's own china. Vegan option for the 12 guests who requested it, coconut base, separately labeled. Hae-suk lifted one card with 2 fingers, as though it might be warm, and read it. Cheesecake. Yes. For 400 people of a certain standing. She set the card down. It's very approachable. It's what the client requested and approved in writing 6 weeks ago. Nadine kept her voice level and her hands folded. If you'd like something changed, that conversation goes through the foundation's events office. I'm happy to give you the number. You keep everything in writing. It wasn't a compliment. Hae-suk's eyes returned to the framed certificate on the wall and stayed there a beat too long. Contracts, approvals, little papers for every small thing. As if a family runs on receipts. A business runs on receipts, my business does. Nadine let the correction stand plain between them. Everything I do here, someone can check. That's how I sleep. How reassuring that a woman needs papers to prove she can be trusted. Hae-suk's smile thinned. In my day, a name was enough. You gave your word and your face, and that was the ledger. I'm not questioning the contract, Nadine. I'm observing. Hae-suk's gaze drifted to the sink at the back, visible through the swinging door's little window, where the broken tubs still sat in their ruined stack. Though I do notice your kitchen seems to be having a difficult morning. There's a smell. There was a supplier problem. It's handled. By whom? By me. That single syllable held an entire argument, folded small. Hae-suk turned the handbag in her hands. My son was here. His car was seen outside. So that was why she'd come. Not the menu. The menu was the knock. The question was the door. Nadine felt it, and chose not to walk through it. He picked up an ingredient for me. He's on his way back. Running errands, for a bakery. Hae-suk let the words sit in the air between them, and the pearls at her throat caught the window light, and her mouth curved without her eyes joining in. You know, when he was a boy, people ran errands for him. Now, he carries cheese. He carries it because he offered, and because I let him carry it and nothing else. Nadine held the older woman's gaze. You raised a man who takes his coat off when he sits down. I'd think you'd be proud of that. Something flickered across Hae-suk's face, there and gone, too fast to name. I raised a man who could have married anyone. She picked her handbag up higher on her arm. The china is the foundation's Wedgwood, the older pattern, not the new. See that your gold leaf doesn't cheapen it. And be on time. My friends will be at the head tables, and they notice when things arrive late, and they remember it longer than they remember when things arrive well. Everything will arrive at 6, plated, labeled, and beautiful. Beautiful. Hae-suk echoed it the way she'd echoed cheesecake, holding it at arm's length to inspect for flaws. We'll see. She was already turning for the door, her small frame precise, her steps short and even. At the threshold she paused without looking back. You call me Umeoni. It's correct of you, but a title is a coat one puts on. Nadine. It isn't the same as the body underneath. The bell chimed. The door closed, she was gone. Nadine stood alone in the front of her shop with 2 menu cards on the glass and her own reflection faint in the case above the yuzu tarts, and she let herself feel it for exactly as long as it took to draw one full breath and let it go. Then she picked up the cards, squared their edges, and set them by the register for tonight's runner. The back door banged. Cheese! Min-jae called from the kitchen. 40 pounds, block, receipt in the bag. I said nothing. I was a man buying cheese. Good. She pushed through the swinging door. He'd set the boxes on the steel counter and was already shrugging out of his coat again, and she went to the first box and cut the tape and pressed her thumb into the block, and it was cold and firm and perfect, and her shoulders came down half an inch. Delgado charged you the rush, she said, reading the receipt. $7.80. I told him to charge whatever it was. Then I paid the difference myself and put your $800 back in your tin. He said it lightly, already knowing. She turned. Min-jae. Cash. A receipt. A man buying cheese. A small smile touched the corner of his mouth. You never said the man couldn't be generous with his own money at a counter. That's not the freight line. That's $20. It's the principle, and you know it's the principle. It's $20, Nadine, and I carried the box myself, and I'm keeping the receipt so it's yours to see. He set the slip on the counter between them, face up, hiding nothing. You want a husband who takes his coat off. Fine. This is what he does when he's sitting down. He rounds up on cheese for the woman he married. Arrest him. She looked at the receipt, and at him, and something in her chest loosened that had been clenched since 9 that morning. Put it in the tin, she said, and don't do it again. I'll do it again. I know you will. She hauled the first block toward the mixer. Your mother was here, she said, cutting the second box. Min-jae's hands paused on his cuffs. What did she want? To confirm the menu. Nadine hauled the first block toward the mixer, and to count how many things about my life she could disapprove of before the clock ran out. She got through most of the list. Nadine. It's fine. It's Tuesday. She dropped the block on the scale and read the weight and started tempering. And the clock behind her eyes clicked forward, past noon now, into the narrow, bright afternoon where 240 cheesecakes still had to be born. Roll up your sleeves or get out of my kitchen. We've got 4 hours and a party full of women who'll remember if we're late. He rolled up his sleeves. They baked. Nadine tempered the block cheese and whipped it smooth with yuzu and honey, and Marisol filled the crusts to a line Nadine had marked on the side of each pan, and Min-jae, given the one job he could not ruin, ferried trays from the fill station to the ovens 2 at a time, moving through her kitchen with his coat off and his cuffs turned back, and the dragon showing at his collar every time he bent to slide a rack home. You've done this before, Nadine said, watching him seat a tray dead level on the first try. I watch you do it every Sunday. Watching isn't the same as carrying. No, he straightened, and for a moment the man who ran half the port with a phone call was just a tall figure sweating in a bakery, and he seemed easier in that skin than in the other. It's better. By 2, the first rack was in. By 1:30, the kitchen smelled of citrus and browned honey, and the number on Nadine's clock had stopped being a threat and started being a schedule. She marked each rack on a sheet taped to the wall. In, out, chilled. A paper for every small thing, exactly as Hae-suk had scorned, and every mark was one more cheesecake that would arrive at 6 with her name behind it, and no one's favor propping it up. She stood back at 4 o'clock and looked at 240 little discs of gold cooling on the racks, whole, on time, hers, and she allowed herself one breath of something close to pride. Neither of them knew yet that the party would remember them for something else entirely. The van doors closed at 5:15, and Nadine counted the trays twice before she let Marisol pull away from the curb. 20 flats. 240 discs, each in its ridged cup, each dusted with the thread of gold leaf she'd anchored with a breath of syrup so it wouldn't lift in the wind. Aunt Ray drove. Nadine sat in the middle seat with the vegan dozen on her lap in a separate box because the coconut base cracked if it slid, and she was not going to hand a cracked cheesecake to a woman who had called her menu approachable. The Kang mansion sat at the top of a road that curved like a question mark. Gate. Camera. A man in a dark suit who checked a tablet before the iron swung in. Ray whistled low. They grow money up here, she said. They grow something, Nadine said. She had been to the house twice. Both times through the service entrance, and she went that way now without being told, because knowing where the caterers were supposed to stand was part of the job, and the job was the only thing about tonight that belonged to her. The kitchen staff had already claimed the long counters. A banquet captain with a headset pointed her to a rolling cart and a corner of stainless steel near the ice wells. Nadine plated where she was put. She did not argue about the corner. She lined the discs on the fluted Wedgwood the fundraiser insisted on, the old pattern, gold rim gone thin from 100 washings, and she set each cheesecake dead center so the leaf caught the chandelier. By 6, the front rooms had filled with the sound of money being pleasant to itself. Strings somewhere, heels on marble, the clink of the fundraiser's borrowed china against the fundraiser's borrowed silver. Min-jae found her at the pass. He'd changed. The tux fit him the way the black suit fit him, which was to say it looked like it had been grown rather than sewn, and the collar sat just high enough that the tail of the dragon showed at his neck when he turned his head. He carried 2 glasses. He set one down by her station and didn't offer it, which was its own kind of manners. "You don't have to plate," he said. "They have people. They have people who'd put the leaf off center." He almost smiled. "My mother is seating her table." "I know. Front left, under the windows." He said it flat, but he angled his body so she'd have to look past him to see the table, and Nadine understood he was giving her the geography on purpose. 3 women were already there, older, silk. One of them wore a brooch the size of a walnut. "Friends of hers?" Nadine asked. "The board wives." "Whitmore money?" "All 3. He picked up his own glass and didn't drink from it. "Stay back here, it's easier." "For who?" He looked at her a moment too long. Then the banquet captain's voice cut across the room, "Plated dessert to fire in 10, and the machine took them both." She plated. She wiped rims. She sent 40 covers out and reset the pass and sent 40 more, and somewhere in the 4th wave the strings stopped and a man tapped a microphone and welcomed 400 people to an evening for the children of the harbor district. And Nadine kept her hands moving, because moving hands did not shake. At 7, she ran short a garnish. The candied yuzu peel lived in a lidded tub in the 2nd cooler, the one the mansion staff had rolled to the far end of the service hall, past a folding wall of white lattice woven through with real jasmine and eucalyptus. A florist's wall, somebody's idea of dividing the caterers from the guests without a door. Nadine went for the tub. She heard her own name on the other side of the flowers. Not the whole name, the shape of it. Holloway said in a register that curled at the edges, and she stopped with her hand on the cooler latch because the voice was Heidsuk's, and Heidsuk was not supposed to be back here, and the way she'd said Holloway was the way you say a word you've been practicing. Nadine did not step around the wall. She stood where the jasmine hid her to the shoulder, and she looked through a gap in the lattice, and there was the front left table pulled close to the flowers for the quiet of it, and there was her mother-in-law, with her back half turned, and her phone flat on her palm. "The little bakery, yes," Heesuk was saying, in English now, slow, for the walnut brooch and the other 2. "The one with her grandmother's name on it. Charming. We all thought it was charming. She married Min-jae so fast," said the brooch. "Fast." Heesuk let the word sit. "You want to know why fast?" Nadine's thumb found the edge of her apron pocket. Her phone was in it. She did not take it out, not yet. "The foundation gives her the dessert contract," Heesuk went on. "A kindness. My son asked for it, so I allowed it. And this spring the flower fund comes up short." She turned the phone so the 3 of them leaned in. 14,000. Gone in one line. The brooch made a sound. The woman beside her put a hand to her collarbone. "You're not saying—" "I'm saying what the statement says." Heesuk's chin went up the way it had gone up in the bakery over the Wedgwood. One transfer, out of the flower account, into hers. Nadine's ears did a strange thing. The room went far away, and then very close. She looked at the phone in Heesuk's hand through the gap in the lattice. A banking screen. A gray header. A line of figures and a name in the recipient field, and even at this distance, even sideways, she could read enough of it to know the account it named was not the Harper & Bloom operating account, because the Harper & Bloom operating account ended in numbers Nadine could recite in her sleep, and those were not the numbers. But the 3 women weren't reading numbers. They were reading Heesuk's face. 14,000, the brooch repeated. "For flowers," Heesuk said, "for the Children's Harbor Gala. And it goes to the girls' bakery, and then—" a small shrug. The shrug of a woman laying down a card she has held all night. "The flowers this spring came from where? A wholesaler no one has heard of. Invoices no one can find." That was the thing that moved Nadine's hand, because Nadine could find the invoices. Nadine had the invoices. The foundation had ordered its spring flowers, the ones for the donor luncheon in April, the ones that filled this very house, through a vendor the Whitmore office had chosen, not her, and she'd only touched it at all because the office had asked Harper and Bloom to coordinate the delivery window with the dessert drop. She had a folder. She had emails. She had a number in her head for what those flowers had cost, and the number in her head and the number on that phone were close enough that the floor tilted. 14,000. She knew that figure. She'd seen it on a coordination sheet with the Whitmore letterhead, the total flower spend for the spring donor season, and here it was walking out of Haisuk's mouth wearing a thief's coat with Nadine's name sewn in the lining. She took the phone out of her apron. Her hands were steady now, steady the way they'd been steady over the cracked coconut base, because there was a task, and the task was clear. She thumbed the screen dark first so no light would bloom in the jasmine. She turned the brightness to nothing. She raised it slow, both hands, elbow braced against the cooler so the frame wouldn't drift, and she found the gap in the lattice, and she found the phone in Haisuk's palm. "She'll deny it," said the third woman, the quiet one. "Of course she'll deny it." Haisuk's mouth did the thing that was not a smile. "They always have an explanation. Receipts, papers." She said papers the way she'd said it in the bakery, like a thing beneath her. "That is how you know." Nadine took the picture. No sound. She'd killed the shutter tone weeks ago for reasons that had nothing to do with this, and everything to do with photographing cakes at dawn without waking the neighborhood. The screen caught it, the flowers in the foreground soft and out of focus, and beyond them, sharp, the gray banking header and the 14,000 line and the recipient name, and, above it all, Haisuk's ringed hand holding the evidence up like a communion wafer. She took 3 more, one wider, one zoomed until the account numbers went to grain but the total held, one with the brooch woman's face in it, leaning in, believing, because a witness to the telling was worth having. Then she lowered the phone and stood very still in the smell of jasmine and let herself understand what she was looking at. It was not a real transfer. She knew that the way she knew the coconut base from the dairy base by weight in her palm. The account named was wrong. She had never in her life moved $14,000 anywhere. She moved money in the low hundreds, and she wrote down every dollar because 14 families had co-signed her name, and she slept at night by keeping the ledger clean. Whatever was on that screen had been built. Someone had made a picture of a theft and handed it to the one woman in the city most willing to believe it. And the amount matched. That was the part that turned her stomach. Any liar could pick a round number. This one had picked her number. The flower spend, the exact spring total that ran through the coordination folder with her fingerprints on the delivery dates. Whoever built the picture had seen those documents, had reached into the paperwork Nadine kept because keeping paperwork was how she stayed clean, and had used it to dirty her. "You'll tell the board?" the brooch asked. "I'll do nothing," Haisuk said, and the modesty in it was worse than a threat. "I'm her mother now. I'll say nothing to anyone." She slid the phone into her structured little bag and clicked the clasp. "I only wanted my friends to know, before the vote, so that when it comes up," she smoothed the front of her floral dress, "no one is surprised." The vote. Nadine filed that too. She didn't know which vote yet. There was always a vote in a house like this. But Haisuk had said before the vote, the way you say before the frost, as though a clock she couldn't see had already started counting down, and Nadine would learn later exactly how many days were on it. For now, she pressed the number into memory the way she pressed everything into memory, and she stepped back from the lattice, and her heel touched the cooler with a soft steel knock. Silence on the other side. "Did you hear something?" the quiet woman said. Nadine had the tub of yuzu peel in her hand before the sentence finished. She rolled the cooler an inch, loud, ordinary, a caterer doing caterer things, and she walked back up the service hall in full view of anyone who cared to look, her apron on, her tray under her arm, invisible in the way the help is always invisible, which was the only gift this house had ever given her, and she took it. At the pass, she set the tub down and gripped the edge of the steel until her knuckles went pale. 14,000. Flowers. Her name. A screen that had eaten her own paperwork and turned it inside out. She breathed the way she made herself breathe when a ganache split. Slow, from the bottom, and she plated the next garnish, and the next, because the covers were still going out and 400 people were still eating her cheesecakes off the fundraiser's thin gold rims, and none of them knew that the caterer's hands had just stopped shaking for a reason that had nothing to do with the work. Min-jae came back through the pass at 7:30. "You went pale," he said. "It's hot back here." "Nadine." She looked at him. The dragon showed at his collar when he tipped his head, and she thought, absurdly, of the morning, of the man who'd carried 40 pounds of block cheese through her back door and left the change in the pot with a receipt. That man and this house did not fit in the same frame, and she'd spent a year keeping them from touching, and now his mother had reached across the seam and pulled. "Your mother's telling her friends I stole from the foundation," she said. He went still. Not the theatrical stillness of a man deciding how to look, the real kind, the kind where the blood goes somewhere else. "What?" 14,000. Out of the flower fund. Into my bakery. She kept her voice under the strings. "She has a screen. A transfer." She showed them. "A transfer doesn't exist because there's no—" "I know it doesn't exist." She turned back to the pass and plated a disc dead center so her hands would have somewhere to be. "The account on the screen isn't mine. I've never moved that kind of money. You know what I move." "Then it's nothing, a lie. You'll what?" She set the plate on the rail. "Go out there and grab your mother by the arm in front of the board and tell her to stop? That's a lie that dies quiet if we let it, and a war if we don't. And it isn't nothing." She looked at him. "The number's right, Min-jae. 14,000 is exactly what the foundation spent on spring flowers. I have that figure. It's in a folder in my office, because Whitmore asked me to coordinate the delivery. Somebody read my folder to build that screen. That landed." She watched it land. His jaw shifted the way it did when he was doing math he didn't like the sum of. "Who has your folder?" he said. "Everyone the foundation copies. Their office. Their vendors. Their—" She stopped. "Their finance people," he finished. "Quiet. I don't know who," she said. "I know it's my number, and I know your mother believed it fast, which means she wanted to." He set his glass down at last, untasted, and the small, clean click of the base on steel was louder than it should have been. "Let me handle it," he said. "There it is. Nadine." That's the same sentence from this morning. She didn't raise her voice. She never raised her voice. The neighborhood had taught her that a low voice carried further than a loud one. "You knock a domino down for me, and 3 fall behind it where I can't see. This isn't cheese. This is my name in a room full of people who write the checks that keep the harbor clinic open. And if you go in there swinging, you make me the thing your mother says I am. A woman who solves her problems with the Kang name behind her. So, we do nothing. We don't do nothing." She pulled her phone from the apron, turned it so only he could see, and let the picture fill the screen. The jasmine soft, the gray header sharp, the 14,000 line, his mother's ringed hand. He looked at it for a long time. "You photographed her," he said. "I photographed the lie." She darkened the screen. "That's the difference between us. You'd have taken the phone. I took a picture of the phone. One of those holds up in a room. The other one's just her word against mine, and in this house her word weighs more." Something moved across his face that she couldn't name and didn't try to. He reached out, not for the phone, for her wrist, and his hand closed warm over the pulse there, and for a second the house went quiet around them. "They'll come for the business," he said. "Lo, you understand that. A lie like this doesn't stay at a table. It walks. Clients hear. The credit union hears. The people who co-signed you. I know who co-signed me. 14 names. An 81-year-old man with 2 loaves of honey bread. That's why I'm not going to burn the house down to put out 1 candle. I'm going to prove it, on paper, where it can't be argued with." Paper. He almost laughed, and there was no humor in it, only the exhaustion of a man watching his wife choose the slowest weapon in the room. She just told 3 women that receipts are how you know someone's guilty. "Then I'll bring so many receipts she chokes on them." The banquet captain's voice again. Coffee service," and the machine reached for them one more time. Min-jae's hand slid off her wrist. He straightened his cuffs, the signet ring catching the light, and he became again the man the front rooms expected, the one who moved through Whitmore money like it owed him rent. "There's a vote coming," Nadine said, before he could go. She said before the vote? What vote? His face closed a half degree. It was small. She only caught it because she'd spent a year learning his face. "Harbor business," he said. "It doesn't touch you." It touched me enough for her to time a lie around it. Nadine. He glanced at the front rooms, then back. The terminal. The port terminal. There's a board vote coming up on it. The family, the investors, the foundation seats overlap. It's a lot of money, and a lot of people who want it to go a particular way. He said it carefully, the way you hand someone a knife handle first. If my mother's putting your name in the water before that vote, then this isn't about you. You're just the easiest thing to throw. Thrown at who? At me. He said it plainly, to reach me. And there it was, the shape under the water she'd felt all night without seeing. Not a mother-in-law's spite. A move. A piece placed on a board she couldn't see the edges of, with her grandmother's name painted on it. "Then I need to see that board," she said. "No, you need to stay out of it." His voice dropped further, urgent now. The protector's reflex she'd married and fought in equal measure. "Let me put people on it. Quietly. You keep the bakery running. You say nothing. You let it blow past, and I'll find who built that screen. And if I say nothing, and it walks, and the credit union calls in the loan before you find anyone?" She shook her head, once. "You keep asking me to trust that the thing you can't see coming won't hit me. It already hit me. It hit me behind a wall of flowers while I was reaching for candied peel." She looked past him, through the arch, to the front left table under the windows where her mother-in-law sat with the walnut brooch and poured tea for the women she'd just recruited. Calm, gracious, the picture of a matriarch at rest. Haisuk lifted her cup. Her eyes came up over the rim, across the room, past the arch, into the service hall, and for one beat, one single beat, they found Nadine standing at the pass in her tangerine apron, with a phone in her pocket. Haisuk smiled. It was the cold one, the bakery one, the one that said your title is a coat, not the body underneath, and it did not falter or flick away. She held Nadine's eyes over the gold rim of the fundraiser's borrowed china, and she sipped, and she turned back to her friends as though she'd looked at nothing more than the wallpaper. "She knows I heard," Nadine thought. "She wants me to know she knows." Nadine did not look away first. She let the matriarch turn, and then she turned herself, unhurried, and picked up a clean plate, and set a cheesecake in the center of it with the gold leaf facing up, and she thought, "Fine. I need copies of everything by morning," she said to Minjae, not looking at him. "The Whitmore flour contract, the vendor invoices, the coordination emails, my bank statements, certified, the real ones, going back a year." She set the plate on the rail. "If she wants to stand on paper, I'll build her a floor of it and let it drop out from under her. Nadine, if you go to the board with this, you make it a fight in the open." "It's already open." She opened it. "I'm just going to make sure the whole room's watching when it closes." She finally looked at him, and her voice went quiet and level and entirely her own. "You wanted to protect me this morning by carrying my cheese. You want to protect me tonight by carrying my fight. I don't need it carried. I need it clean, and I need it mine, and I need you to get me those documents, and then stand back and let me stand up." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he nodded, a single degree of it, the first time all night he'd conceded anything, and he took his untouched glass and walked back toward the front rooms, toward his mother's table, toward the vote she'd named and he wouldn't fully explain, and Nadine watched the dragon disappear beneath his collar as he turned. Coffee went out, 400 cups, the strings started again. Nadine plated the last of the vegan dozen for the 12 guests who'd asked for coconut, and she wiped the rim of each one with a cloth that came away clean, and when the final cover left the pass, she took her phone out one more time and looked at the picture. The jasmine, the gray screen, the 14,000 line that was her own number turned into a knife. Haisuk's ringed hand holding it up to the light. She did not delete it. She made 3 copies. She mailed one to the bakery account and one to a folder no one else could reach and left one where it was, and then she put the phone away, and she picked up her empty trays, and she carried them out through the service door into the cold at the top of the question mark road, where Aunt Ray was waiting in the van with the engine running and the heater on. "You get 'em all fed?" Ray asked. "Every one." Ray looked at her face in the dashboard light. "Uh-huh. And what else?" Nadine climbed in and pulled the door shut and set the empty trays on her lap the way she'd held the full ones going up. Somebody up in that house, she said, spent tonight telling rich women I'm a thief. She buckled the belt. And they used my own paperwork to do it. Ray put the van in gear. The gate camera watched them roll toward the iron. So what do we do? Ray said. Nadine watched the mansion shrink in the side mirror, all its windows gold, 400 people inside eating cake off borrowed china, while a lie about her walked table to table in a floral dress. We start with the folder, she said, and we don't miss a single page. The gate swung open, and the van went down the road that curved like a question, and behind them the house kept its lights on long into the night. The folder was on the counter before the ovens were warm. Nadine spread it under the pendant light while the shop was still dark at the edges, the way it got before Marisol arrived, before the first proof of dough, contracts, invoices, emails printed with their headers intact, a year of bank statements with the credit union stamp pressed into the corner of every page. Min Jae had kept his word. A courier had left the box at the back door at 6, and she had signed for it with her own name and no one else's. She did not sit. She stood over it and read. The Whitmore flour contract came first. She ran a finger down the delivery windows, the ones the foundation had asked Harper and Bloom to coordinate because Nadine was the only vendor who answered her phone. Spring. The whole spring laid out in dates and stems. Peonies for the March luncheon. Ranunculus for the April board dinner. The total at the bottom of the coordination sheet. $14,000. She had known the number would be there. Seeing it printed still made her set the page down flat, as if it might lift off the counter. You're early, Marisol said from the door, coat still on. So are you. You called me at 5. Marisol looked at the spread of paper and stopped unbuttoning. That the thing from last night? That's the thing. Nadine slid one statement toward her. Read me the last 4 digits of our operating account. Marisol read them. Again. She read them again. Nadine turned the statement so the account header faced up and set her phone beside it. The photograph glowing, the gray bank screen from the mansion sharp behind the soft blur of jasmine. 2 account numbers. She lined them up the way she lined up a cake ring on a plate, centered, exact. They did not match. That's not us, Marisol said. No. So whose is it? Nobody's. Nadine pulled the phone back. It's a picture of a screen. You can make a screen say anything. Marisol was quiet. Then, what do? We count. They counted. Nadine had learned to count when the bank turned her down and the credit union said yes. Learned that a person who keeps every receipt is a person nobody can rewrite. She built 2 stacks on the steel counter. One was everything the foundation could confirm on its own letterhead. The other was everything a bank had stamped. She was still building when her phone lit with Min Jae's name. Did it come? He said. It came. All of it? All of it. She looked at the 2 stacks. Where are you? Downstairs from the boardroom. A pause with elevator sound in it. There's a date, Nadine. I know there's a date. The terminal vote. His voice dropped under the hum. 10 days. She had a rubber band in her fingers. She wrapped it once around the bank stack and did not answer. 10 days, he said again. And my mother spent last night telling 3 women you took money. That story has a head start. In this city, a head start is the whole race. Then I don't run their race. She snapped the rubber band flat. I run mine. Nadine, you gave me the paper. Let me use the paper. He breathed out. She could hear him deciding not to fix it, which for him was a kind of labor, like carrying trays. Tell me what you need. Nothing yet. She looked at the certificate on the wall, the 14 families, the seal of the credit union that had believed her when the marble bank did not. When I need you, I'll ask. And when I ask, it'll be for something you can't do with your name. That's the only thing I can't do. That's the only thing I want. He was quiet a moment. She's going to be at the harbor benefit, he said. 9 days out, the families, the board, the donors, same women. She'll sit them at the front again. Nadine set the rubber band down. Something in her went still and clean, the way it did when a broken order became a plan. Good, she said. Nadine. You said same women. She was already looking at the 2 stacks, already seeing the room. Then that's where I put it down. She hung up before he could decide to protect her. The panel went up on the bakery's website by noon, and she wrote it herself. She did not hire anyone. She sat at the little desk between the walk-in and the office and typed it plainly, because plain was a thing marble people could not argue with. Harper and Bloom Bakery keeps open books, she wrote. Every dollar in and out of the Whitmore coordination account is available for review. Below it, she posted the flour contract with the private numbers blacked out, the delivery windows, the stamped statements, the coordination sheet with its total at the bottom. $14,000, spent on flowers, receipted to the stem. She titled it Transparency, and did not mention a single name. Then she called Evelyn Price. Evelyn was the board's donor president, a tall woman who wore coral and pearls and had a way of looking at a room like she was pricing it. She had never been unkind to Nadine. She had also never been warm. She answered on the third ring with the voice of a woman who screened her own calls. Miss Holloway. Miss Price. I posted something today. I'd rather you heard it from me than from a phone at a lunch table. A pause. Careful. I've heard things at lunch tables. I know you have. Nadine kept her voice level. One of them was about me. I posted the receipts. You posted receipts to an accusation no one made in writing. Evelyn let that sit. That's a bold way to answer a whisper. It makes the whisper louder. It makes the whisper accountable. Nadine turned the coordination sheet under her hand. There's a harbor benefit in 9 days. I'd like 5 minutes before dessert. To do what? To show my books to the people who were told not to trust them. Evelyn was quiet long enough that Nadine heard a clock somewhere on the woman's end. You understand what you're asking, she said finally. You're asking me to give you a room to accuse a Kang inside a Kang event. I'm not accusing anyone. Nadine looked at the photograph on her phone, the ringed hand, the fabricated screen. I'm asking someone to repeat what she already said. Out loud, where I can answer it. And if she doesn't repeat it, then the room learns something too. The clock ticked on Evelyn's end. Nadine let it. She had learned that silence, offered fully, was its own argument. 5 minutes, Evelyn said. Before dessert, if your paper is what you say it is. A breath. And Miss Holloway, if it isn't, I will be the first one to leave the table. If it isn't, Nadine said, I'll walk you to the door myself. 8 days. 7. She baked through them. She did not close the shop, and she did not hide the certificate off the wall, though Marisol asked her twice if she should. 2 customers canceled standing orders with careful voices, and Nadine wrote them back thank you notes and refunded deposits she was not required to refund. Mr. Okafor came Thursday for his seed bread and set $2 extra on the counter, unasked, and when she pushed it back, he pushed it forward and said, "For the lawyer," and would not take it. She kept it in the tip jar and looked at it while she proofed. She slept little. She learned the pages the way she learned a recipe, until she could recite the delivery windows with her eyes shut, until the account numbers sat behind her teeth ready to be spoken. A woman who fumbles her own paper looks like a liar. She would not fumble. The credit union called her Wednesday, unprompted. A loan officer she had known since the co-signing, a soft-voiced man named Ruiz, told her that 2 of the 14 families had phoned in worried, having heard a thing at church. He had told them the account was clean and the books were open. You keep good records, he said, and she pressed the phone hard to her ear. Cleanest eye service. Whoever's talking picked the wrong baker. She wrote the 14 families a letter that night, 1 page, no lawyer's words in it, and mailed it before she could reconsider. Min Jae came by twice. The first time he stood in the doorway with his coat on and watched her fold the certified statements into a leather portfolio, page by page, in order, and he said nothing about fixing anything, which cost him, she could see it cost him. The second time he brought her the certification letter from the credit union, notarized, confirming that every stamp on every statement was theirs. Your mother, Nadine said, sliding it into the portfolio. Does she know about the benefit? She's on the seating committee. His jaw worked. She made the seating. Then she'll put her friends up front. She always does. Good. Nadine closed the portfolio and pressed the flap flat. Let her build the table. I'll bring the plates. He looked at her a long moment. You're not afraid of her. I'm terrified of her. Nadine set the portfolio on the shelf above the oven, where she could see it. That's a different thing than being stopped by her. The harbor benefit was in the ballroom of a downtown hotel, not the mansion this time, and Nadine came through the front doors with a portfolio under her arm and a cake box she did not need, because a woman carrying a cake box is a woman with a reason to be anywhere. She wore the orange dress, tangerine with the white at the collar, the gold at her ears. She had thought about wearing the work clothes, the apron, the armor of the person they had decided she was. She had chosen the dress instead. If they were going to look at her, they would look at all of her. The front tables were exactly where Min-jae said they would be. Hae-suk sat at the head of the nearest, in the floral dress and the short pearls, her bag squared on her lap like a shield, the three bored wives around her. The one with the brooch was there, so was the quiet one, the one who had asked, that night behind the flowers, whether she had heard something. They saw Nadine come in. The brooch woman leaned toward Hae-suk and said a thing behind her hand. Hae-suk did not turn her head. She lifted her chin a half-inch, the way she had in the bakery over the receipts, and she smiled the cold smile, and she let Nadine cross the whole floor under it. Evelyn met her at the edge of the tables. Coral, pearls, a single gold pin. She did not smile. "You have your 5 minutes," she said, low. "After the Harbor District video, before the dessert service, I'll introduce you as a vendor with a statement." Her eyes went to the portfolio and back. "Whatever's in there had better hold." "It holds." "Then hold it." Evelyn stepped back. "The microphone is at the podium. Don't wander from it. People trust a woman who stays still." Dinner went by like weather. Nadine sat at a side table with the caterers she half knew, and ate almost nothing and watched the front of the room. Min-jae came in late in a dark suit, the dragon showing above his collar, and took a seat at his mother's table because that was where his card was, and he did not look at Nadine, which was the kindest thing he could have done. Hae-suk talked to her friends behind her hand. Twice the brooch woman glanced back toward the caterer's table, toward Nadine, and twice looked away. The Harbor District video played. Children, a rebuilt pier, a food program, the swelling music that told rich people their money had done good. When the lights came up, Evelyn rose to the podium and thanked the donors, and then she said, "Before dessert, one of our vendors has asked for a moment. Ms. Nadine Holloway, of Harper & Bloom." The room did the polite thing, the soft applause for a name no one placed. Nadine stood, portfolio in hand, and walked to the podium under 400 faces, and she found Hae-suk's in the front and held it while she set her papers down. The microphone was cold under her mouth. She let a beat pass. "Some of you," she said, "have heard a number about me. $14,000. The room stopped rustling. In the front, Hae-suk's smile did not move, but her hand came off the table and settled on the bag. "I'm not going to make you take my word," Nadine said. "I brought paper." She opened the portfolio. She did it slowly, on purpose, because a woman who rushes looks like she is hiding, and a woman who takes her time looks like she has nothing to hide. "This spring, the Whitmore Foundation asked my bakery to coordinate the flowers for its events. Not to buy them from me, to schedule them. Peonies in March, ranunculus in April." She lifted the coordination sheet so the front tables could see the letterhead. The total, across the whole spring, printed here on the foundation's own account, was $14,000. She set it down and lifted the next page. "That is the number some of you were shown as money I took." She let it land. "It is not money I took. It is money the foundation spent on flowers, and here is where every stem went." She laid the pages down one at a time, the way she plated, centered and clean. The delivery windows, the florist invoices, the stamped statements from the credit union, 1 year of them, every deposit in the low hundreds because that was the size of her life. A bakery that moved money the way a bakery moves money, in cake orders and bread and standing accounts, never once in a single line of $14,000. "My operating account," she said, "has never held a transfer that size. Not in, not out. The credit union has certified that." She lifted the notarized letter. "Their stamp is on every page. You can call them Monday. The numbers on the sheet I posted this week, which some of you have already read." The brooch woman had gone still. The quiet one was leaning forward, reading the pages from 10 feet away as if she could make them out. "I was shown, once," Nadine said, "a photograph of a bank screen, a transfer of $14,000 out of a flower account into an account with my name near it." She did not look at Hae-suk when she said it. She looked at the room. The account number on that screen is not my account number. I know mine. I've known it since the day 14 families co-signed so I could open my doors. She let a breath go. You can build a picture of a screen that says anything. What you cannot build is a year of stamped statements that agree with each other. She squared the pages. Then she raised her eyes to the front table. Mrs. Kang. The name went across the room like a dropped tray. 400 faces turned by degrees toward the floral dress and the pearls. Hae-suk's chin came up. The cold smile held, but her hand had closed on the bag until the knuckles showed. You told friends of yours a story about me, Nadine said, and she kept her voice even, kept it gentle, because gentle was the sharpest thing she owned in that room. I'm not angry, I'm asking. Everything I brought is here on this table, certified, stamped, with a phone number you can call Monday morning. She spread her hand over the pages. So I'd like you to say it again, now, in front of these people, with the auditor's number right here. Tell the room I stole $14,000, and then we'll call the credit union together, on speaker, and let them read us the account. The silence had weight. Nadine could feel 400 people not breathing. Hae-suk's mouth opened. Nothing came. The brooch woman looked at her. The quiet one looked at her. Evelyn, at the edge of the podium, looked at her, and her pricing gaze was doing arithmetic that had nothing to do with money. You said it behind a wall of flowers, Nadine said, softer now, almost kind. I'm giving you a microphone and a table full of proof. Say it to my face. Hae-suk's throat moved. Her eyes went once, fast, toward Min-jae, and Min-jae looked back at his mother with a face Nadine had never seen him wear, and he said nothing at all, and his silence was a door closing. Hae-suk started. The room leaned in. I confirmed a menu, Hae-suk said. Her voice came out thin. I don't know anything about accounts. I don't handle those things. You showed a photograph. I showed my friends a thing someone gave me. The chin dropped a fraction. She reached for the old weapon, the disdain, and it came out brittle. I don't understand these papers. I never claimed to understand papers. But you understood them well enough to accuse me of one. Nadine did not raise her voice. She lowered it, and the room strained toward her. Someone gave you that photograph. That's what you just said. Someone gave it to you. She let it sit one heartbeat. Who? Hae-suk's hand pressed flat on the bag. The smile was gone now, not replaced by anger, replaced by nothing, the face of a woman who has reached for a thing that is not where she left it. That's enough, she said, but quiet, to the table, not to the room. It's more than enough, Nadine agreed. She gathered her pages. She did it without hurry, tapping them square against the podium, the sound carrying in the hush like a gavel. I won't take another minute of the evening. The books are open. The number is a flower bill. And any of you who were told otherwise, she looked at the brooch woman, at the quiet one, at the whole front row, have my invoice folder and a phone number for Monday. She slid the portfolio shut. Thank you for the 5 minutes, she said to Evelyn, and stepped back from the microphone. The applause did not come right away. It came in pieces, from the back first, from the tables that had no stake, and then from further in, and it grew, uneven and real, the applause of a room that has watched someone stay still and hold. Nadine did not smile at it. She picked up her portfolio and walked back the way she had come, past the front table, past the floral dress, and Hae-suk did not lift her chin this time. She looked at the linen. She looked at her own hands on the bag, and for the first time in the 2 years Nadine had known her, the older woman was the one who could not hold a gaze. Evelyn caught her at the edge of the floor. She did not offer her hand. She offered something better. I'll be calling the credit union Monday, Evelyn said, low, and when they tell me your paper is clean, I'm going to say so to every person who was shown that photograph. Her eyes went to the front table and came back. You didn't just clear yourself tonight, Miss Holloway. No? No. Evelyn's mouth did something that was almost a smile. You made me ask who gave her the picture, and now I can't stop asking. She stepped away toward the donors. Min-jae found her by the doors. He had left his table, left his card, left his mother sitting in the ruin of her own front row, and he stood in front of Nadine with the portfolio between them, and the dragon at his collar, and a look on his face she would spend the drive home trying to name. You didn't touch me, she said. You didn't fix it. You sat there and let me. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. His voice was rough. Watching them look at you and keeping my hands in my lap. I know. She meant it. Thank you. She couldn't say it. He glanced back once at the table, at the small figure in the floral dress being talked at now by the brooch woman, being asked. Nadine could see even from here, the question that Evelyn had started and would not stop. In 2 years, I've never seen her lose a room. She didn't lose it to me. Nadine settled the portfolio under her arm. She lost it to a phone number. Minjae almost laughed, and then didn't, because behind him at the front table, his mother had turned her face away from her friends and toward the window, alone at the head of a table she had built, and something in his expression closed over. Someone gave her that photograph, he said quietly. It was not a question anymore. You set it up there, and I felt the whole room hear it. Someone with the foundation's numbers built that screen and put it in my mother's hand. Finance people, Nadine said. That's all I've got. Someone who could read my coordination folder and copy the flour total to the dollar. That's a short list. Minjae's eyes had gone somewhere else, somewhere with a name on it, and his jaw set. That's a very short list. Then don't say it here. She put 2 fingers flat on his chest over the closed suit. Not tonight. Tonight I proved I didn't do it. That's all tonight was for. She dropped her hand. Who did it is a different night. He covered the place where her fingers had been, briefly, without seeming to know he did it. 10 days to the vote, he said. Now 9. 9. Nadine looked back once at the room, at the applause still thinning out, at Evelyn moving from donor to donor with her question, at the empty chair Minjae had left, and the small woman who could not turn back around. Then we've got 9 to find the short list. We. She said it plainly, the way she'd typed the panel, the way she stamped a receipt. You gave me the paper. I put it on the table. Now somebody's going to be very interested in how their picture stopped working. She started toward the doors and the cold street and the van idling at the curb where Aunt Ray would be waiting with the heater on. And people get careless when their lie stops walking. Minjae fell into step beside her, matching her without touching her, which she was learning was his way of holding a door. Careless how? He said. They move. Nadine pushed through into the night, the portfolio warm against her side, the orange of her dress catching the lobby light and throwing it back. A lie that's working sits still. A lie that just got proved false starts running. And a thing that runs. She looked up at him, and for the first time since the mansion there was no fear in it, only the clean, cold focus of a woman who had found the seam, leaves tracks. Behind them, in the ballroom, the dessert service began, 400 plates going out, and not one of them from her ovens, and the front table sat with its questions, and the woman with the brooch leaned close to Hyasuk and asked her something a third time, and this time Hyasuk did not answer at all. The van was still warm when Nadine's phone lit up on her knee. Minjae's name. She let it ring twice before she picked it up, watching the hotel shrink in the side mirror. It's done, he said. I called the firm tonight. From the car. Which firm? Ours? Internal. They start on the flour account in the morning. A pause on his end. The sound of an engine under him too. Every wire in and out of the foundation for 18 months. Every vendor. Every signature. Nadine pressed the phone harder to her ear. Good. There's more. He breathed out. I want you to step back now. She turned from the window. Aunt Ray glanced sideways and said nothing. Hands at 10 and 2. Say that again? You did the room tonight. You won the room. His voice stayed level, careful. The voice he used when he had already decided and was waiting for her to catch up. Let the auditors carry it from here. You go back to the bakery. You bake. You keep your head down until the vote is through. 9 days. 9 days. Then it's over. The van took the curve at the bottom of the hill. Nadine watched the streetlights swing across the ceiling and thought about the podium, about the sound the pages made when she squared them. You want me to disappear until it's convenient, she said. I want you safe. Those are not the same sentence. He was quiet. She could hear him choosing. Nadine, the people who built that screen, they had your coordination file. They read your pages to fake mine. That's not a woman with a grudge. That's someone with access, and someone with access can do worse than a photograph. I know exactly what they can do. She kept her voice flat so it wouldn't shake. That's why I'm not going to sit in my kitchen and wait for them to do it. You're not trained for this. Neither was I trained to make 400 cheesecakes with a dead palate in 6 hours. I figured it out. The line held. Down the hill, the harbor lights came up, the container cranes standing black against the water, and somewhere out there, the terminal that all of this was really about. Let the firm work, he said finally. That's all I'm asking. I'll let the firm work. She watched the cranes slide past. I'm just not going to close my eyes while they do. She hung up before he could turn it into a longer conversation. Aunt Ray let a mile go by. He wants you behind glass, Ray said. He wants me alive. Man can want 2 things and only say the pretty one. Ray signaled, changed lanes. What are you actually going to do? Nadine looked at the coordination folder on her lap, the leather portfolio she'd carried into the room. Somewhere inside the foundation there was a person who had opened a file just like it. A short list, Min-jae had said. Finance people. I'm going to find the one honest name on the short list, she said. Before somebody scares her quiet. The name came to her at 4 in the morning, standing at the mixer with the light off. Not a guess, a memory. Spring, the flower coordination, the emails that went back and forth about delivery windows, and who signed off on the wholesaler invoices. One person had answered every message inside an hour. Careful replies. Numbers that always footed. A woman who CC'd her own supervisor on everything, the way people do when they have learned the hard way to leave a trail. Choi Eun-ji. Internal accounting. The foundation's books ran through her desk before they ran anywhere else. Nadine didn't have a personal number. She had a bakery, and she had 8 days, and she had the thing that had worked in the room. Paper, out in the open, nothing hidden. At 7, she opened Harper & Bloom as always. At 9, she wrote a short email to the General Foundation accounting inbox, the one Yoon-ji monitored, and she made it about an invoice. A real one, a discrepancy in a March delivery window she could actually document. Nothing about screens, nothing about Hye-suk, just a vendor asking a bookkeeper to reconcile a date. She got an out of office. Choi Eun-ji is away from her desk. For urgent matters, contact the CFO's office. Nadine read it twice. Away from her desk. 8 days before a vote that hung on the foundation's numbers, the one bookkeeper who touched every wire was away from her desk. She did not call the CFO's office. Yoon-ji came into the bakery herself on the 2nd day, at closing, in a brown coat with the collar up. Nadine knew her before she said a word. Small, careful, glasses with brown frames, a phone held in both hands like something that might jump. She stood inside the door and looked at the empty tables and the case with 3 loaves left in it and did not sit. You emailed about a March window, Yoon-ji said. Her English had the flat precision of someone who checked each word before spending it. I don't work that account anymore. Since when? Since April. Yoon-ji's eyes went to the window, to the street, back. May I ask you something first? Sit down and I'll give you tea, and you can ask me anything. I'll stand. But she came off the door, 2 steps. The benefit, the pages you put on the table, were they real? Everyone. The bank stamp on the statements, the credit union. Notarized. I have the letter. Nadine kept her hands where Yoon-ji could see them, flat on the counter, the way you calm a bird. You want to see it? It's in the back. You want to call the credit union? The number's on the transparency page. I'll dial it for you and put it on speaker and walk away. Something in Yoon-ji's shoulders came down half an inch. I believed you at the benefit, she said quietly. That's the problem. I stood at the back with the servers and I believed you, and then I couldn't sleep, because I'm the one who was supposed to catch it. Nadine came around the counter slowly. Catch what? Yoon-ji set her phone on the nearest table, face down, deliberate, like laying down a card she couldn't take back. In April, I flagged 3 vendor invoices on the flour account. The prices were wrong, not a little wrong. She pressed her lips. Freight lines charging like they were shipping steel. Peonies at a number I have never seen for peonies. I wrote it up. I sent it up. To who? To the CFO's office. That's the chain. Everything on the foundation books goes through the CFO before the board sees it. Yoon-ji's hand was flat on the table now, next to the phone. The next week, my access to the vendor master file was revoked for a permissions review. It never came back. They gave me the payroll module instead. Payroll. She said the word like an insult. I count paychecks now. I don't touch vendors. The bakery was very quiet. Outside, a bus sighed at the corner and pulled away. Who signed the permissions review? Nadine said. Yoonji looked at her for a long moment. You already know who runs the CFO's office. Say it anyway. I don't want to put a name in your mouth. Kang Jun-so, Yoonji said it, and then breathed like she'd been holding it since April. The chief financial officer, Mrs. Kang's nephew. He revoked my access 9 days after I flagged his freight invoices. Nadine sat down across from her. Somewhere under her ribs, a cold, clean feeling opened up. The same one she got when a number finally footed after an hour of not footing. The shortlist had a name, and the name had done to Yoonji exactly what it was now trying to do to her. Flagged a problem, so they made the problem disappear instead of the problem's cause. You kept the invoices, Nadine said. It wasn't a question. Yoonji was a woman who CC'd her supervisor. Yoonji kept everything. I kept the ones I saw before they cut my access. Yoonji's thumb moved on the edge of the phone. 3 of them. Screenshots from before, time-stamped. After that, the vendor file was closed to me. Would you show me? That's why I couldn't sleep. Yoonji turned the phone over. I keep asking myself if showing you makes it better or makes it worse. For me, for the 14 families I heard about, for everyone whose name is smaller than his. You already answered that, Nadine said gently. You came in the door. The screenshots were small and gray, and they were the most beautiful thing Nadine had seen all week. 3 invoices, 3 vendors, all billing the flour account. Yoonji laid them on the table one at a time and narrated them the way Nadine had narrated her pages at the podium. Flat, sequential, letting the numbers do the shouting. This one, Yoonji tapped. Wholesale florist, real company, real flowers. But look at the freight line. Delivery charged separately, same address as the shop, 40 minutes away, billed like it came from another state. Nadine leaned in. The freight was almost as much as the flowers. And this one, Yoonji swiped. Different florist, same freight carrier, same rate structure. Peonies at triple, she swiped again. Third one, third florist. Same carrier, always the same carrier. Nadine's eyes stopped on the carrier line. A name in small type, a logistics company. She read it, and read it again, and the 4 o'clock bakery went sideways under her for a second. She knew that carrier. Not the name, the shape of it. A transport line that leased its trucks and its slots to the smaller dairies and wholesalers around the harbor. The kind of outfit nobody looked at twice because it just moved boxes. Months ago, in this same room, with cream cheese rotting on the loading dock, Min Jae had said he knew the man who owned the transport line the Northgate Dairy leased from. He'd offered to lean on it. She'd said no. The same transport line was now the freight carrier padding every flour invoice on the foundation's books. What? Yoonji said, watching her face. You went somewhere. I know this carrier. Nadine put her finger on the small gray name. Not from flowers. From here. My dairy supplier leases from them. She looked up. Whoever built the fake screen, whoever padded these invoices, they're routing it all through one freight line. One carrier that touches half the small businesses on the harbor and gets ignored because it's just trucks. Yoonji went still. That's why the numbers were impossible, she said slowly. It was never the flowers. The flowers are real. It's the freight. You inflate the freight, you skim the difference. And the carrier's the box you hide it in. She pressed her glasses up her nose. And a freight line that leases to everyone. Nobody can prove which load was real and which was invented. It's the perfect... She stopped. Say it. It's the perfect place to move money and call it shipping. Nadine stood up. She couldn't sit anymore. She walked to the case and back, and the 3 loaves watched her go and come. 14,000, she said. The number my mother-in-law showed those women. It's the flour total, but the flour total is real flowers plus fake freight. So the real theft isn't 14,000 at all. 14,000 is just the piece they could pin on a name they'd already picked. You, Yoonji said. Me, because I coordinated the flowers, so my name was already on the delivery windows. All they had to do was point at the total and say she took it, and it lands, because I'm the one holding the folder. Nadine's jaw set. They didn't invent a crime. They took a real skim, hung it on the one person standing closest to the flowers, and made a picture. Yoonji gathered the phone back into both hands. Her knuckles were pale. "If I give you these," she said, "I lose the payroll job too. I lose everything. You'll know exactly where they came from. There were 3 people with vendor access in April, and 2 of them still have it. Then we don't spend you yet." Nadine crouched so they were eye level. "I'm not going to walk into a room and wave your screenshots. That gets you fired, and gets him a warning. We do it the way that worked. Paper. Certified. Enough of it that no one person is the source. How? The carrier bills the foundation, but the carrier also bills my dairy supplier, and a dozen other small shops that lease slots." Nadine felt the plan lock into place, tooth by tooth. "Their rates for real freight are on real invoices sitting in real filing cabinets all over this harbor. If I can put an honest freight rate next to their flour freight rate, side by side, on paper, anyone can pull, then the padding proves itself. And it doesn't come from you. It comes from 12 businesses who don't even know they're witnesses." Yoonji stared at her. "You want to audit them," she said, "from the outside, using their own customers. I want to do to their freight numbers what I did to the 14,000. Nadine straightened. "Put the truth next to the lie and let the room see the gap." She did not tell Min-jae that night. She almost did. She had the phone in her hand at 11, thumb over his name, the whole thing loaded and ready. Yoonji, the freight, the carrier he'd offered to lean on months ago. He would know that carrier better than anyone. He could pull 100 things she couldn't. And he would put her behind glass. That was the trouble. The second she said Jun-so out loud to Min-jae, it stopped being paper and started being family. His mother's nephew. His own CFO. The man was trying to take the terminal vote out from under him, and Min-jae, the moment he understood that, would stop being careful about her and start being lethal about him, and the whole thing would burn down into exactly the war she'd been refusing since the first ruined pallet. She set the phone face down on the nightstand. Not yet. Not until the paper was thick enough that it didn't need his name or his hands to stand up on its own. She texted him instead. "Staying at the bakery late this week. Big custom order. Don't worry if the lights are on." The reply came fast. "Good. Stay in. I'll come by Thursday." She looked at that a while. Stay in. 2 words that meant keep you safe and meant keep you out of it, and there was no longer any daylight between the two. "Love you," she wrote back, because it was true and because it was cover, and she turned off the light. Aunt Ray drove her to 4 suppliers in 2 days. Not the padded ones, the honest ones. The small operations that leased slots from the same carrier and paid real freight for real loads. A fish market, a produce wholesaler, a linen service. The Delgados, where she'd bought 40 pounds of block cheese in cash the morning this whole thing started. Nadine walked in as what she was, a bakery owner, and asked a bakery owner's question, "What's this carrier charging you for a pallet these days? Because mine keeps creeping, and I want to know if it's just me." Nobody hit a freight rate. Freight rates weren't secret. Delgado's own son pulled a folder and read her 3 months of numbers off the top of his head. The fish market was harder. The owner squinted at her over the counter, wiped his hands on his apron, and asked why a baker cared about his shipping. Nadine told him the truth, most of it. Her carrier was creeping. She wanted to know if it was creeping for everyone or just for her. The man softened at that. Everyone hated the carrier. Everyone thought their rate was the one getting bent. He wrote his number on the back of a receipt and signed under it without being asked. The produce wholesaler kept his invoices in a shoebox and let her photograph 6 of them on the loading dock while a forklift beeped behind them. The linen service emailed hers before she'd made it back to the van. By the end of the second afternoon, the letterheads were stacking up in the portfolio, like proof of a thing nobody in any of those shops had a name for. They just knew the freight felt wrong. She was the one turning felt wrong into a column. "You realize," Aunt Ray said, pulling out of the wholesaler's lot, "you're doing his job." She tipped her head back toward the harbor, toward the finance desk Nadine hadn't described to her, and didn't need to. The nephews. The one you won't name in my van. "I'm doing the job he made a woman disappear for doing," Nadine said. "That's different." Is it? It's louder. By Thursday, she had 6 honest freight rates from 6 businesses, written on their own letterhead, dated, signed by the people who paid them. 6 real prices for moving a pallet a short distance across the harbor. She laid them on the bakery table next to Yoonji's 3 screenshots, and she did the arithmetic in pencil, slow, twice. The flour account had been charged, for the same short haul, between 4 and 6 times the honest rate. Every time, on every florist, through the same carrier. She sat back. The pencil rolled off the table and she let it. It was real. It wasn't a feeling or an accusation or a whisper behind a floral partition. It was a column of numbers with names and dates and signatures. And the gap between the honest column and the flour column was money. And the money had a root, and the root had an owner, and the owner's invoices had been protected by a man who took away the one bookkeeper who noticed. She thought about calling Evelyn. Evelyn had promised to phone the credit union Monday, to tell everyone who'd seen the screen that it was clean. Evelyn had also said she couldn't stop asking who gave Hyasuk the photo. Now Nadine could answer her. Not with a name, with a carrier, with a freight rate, with 6 pieces of letterhead. She reached for her phone, and it rang in her hand before she touched it. Min Jae. "I'm outside," he said. "You didn't hear the car?" She looked at the front window. His sedan at the curb, lights off, and him already crossing the sidewalk with something under his arm. "Doors open," she said, and stood, and swept the 6 letterheads and the 3 screenshots into the leather portfolio in one motion, and closed the flap, and set it on the chair beside her like it was nothing. He came in on the cold, coat still on, and set a folder of his own on the table between them. His face had a thing in it she hadn't seen since the night at the mansion, not worry. Something further along than worry. "The internal firm found something," he said, "in the flour account." Nadine kept her hands still on the table. "Tell me." "Freight." He opened his folder. "The flour invoices are padded on the shipping line. Badly. Whoever did it got greedy." He turned a page toward her, and there it was, a printout of the same pattern Yoonji had shown her in gray at 4 in the morning. "The auditors flagged the carrier. I know the carrier, Nadine. I've done business at the edge of it for years." His jaw worked. "It leases to half the harbor. It's the one I offered to lean on for you. For the dairy. Months ago. In this room." "I remember. So do I." He looked up, and the thing in his face resolved, and it was the thing she'd been afraid of. "Which means whoever ran this had to know the harbor the way I know it. Had to know which box nobody opens. That's not my mother. My mother can barely send an email." He said the next part quiet. "That's someone in finance. Someone who signs off before the board sees anything." The name was right there between them, unspoken, sitting on the table like a third folder. Nadine could have said it. He had walked himself to the edge of it. One word and they'd be standing in the same place, and then he'd take the whole thing out of her hands and out onto the water where his hands worked, and Yoonji would be a loose thread he'd have to protect or cut, and the paper she'd spent 2 days building would become evidence in a war instead of proof in a room. She looked at the folder on the chair beside her, the one with 6 honest letterheads and 3 time-stamped screenshots, the one she'd built so it wouldn't need his name or his hands to stand up. Min Jae, she chose each word the way Eunji chose hers. "Who's on that list?" "The finance list, the short one." He held her eyes, and for the first time since the mansion, she watched him decide. Not to tell her something, watched him fold a name back down inside himself the exact way she was folding hers. "Let the firm finish," he said. "Then I'll have it clean." "That's my line," she said. "You're the one who wants to lean on carriers." "Not anymore. Not with you standing where you're standing." He closed his folder. "Go on with your custom order. Keep the lights on. Thursday I'll—" "It's Thursday." He stopped. The clock over the case read past midnight. It was Friday now, and they both knew it, and neither of them corrected it. He stood and buttoned his coat and looked at the leather portfolio on the chair beside her. One beat too long, the way she'd looked at his folder. He didn't ask. She didn't offer. 8 days, he said at the door. 7, she said. It's Friday. He almost smiled. It didn't reach anywhere. 7. And then he was gone into the cold, and the sedan pulled away without its lights until the corner. and Nadine stood alone in the bakery with two folders that told the same story from two directions, and a name that both of them were now carrying, and neither of them would say, because the second either one of them spoke it, it would stop being paper. She opened the portfolio. 6 letterheads, 3 screenshots, her own pencil arithmetic, 4 to 6 times the honest rate, every time. She thought about Yoonji at the door, with her phone held in both hands like it might jump. She thought about the 14 families ringing the credit union after church. She thought about Delgado's son reading freight rates off the top of his head, a witness who didn't know he was one. Then she pulled a clean sheet toward her and, at midnight, began to build the column that would put the honest number next to the lie, the one that didn't need the Kang name to stand, the one that would still be standing after everyone with a folder had gone quiet. Outside, 7 days out, the harbor cranes held the dark over the terminal, and somewhere behind a desk that signed off before the board ever saw a page, a man who had made one person disappear for counting too well had no idea that the counting had started again, in a bakery with the lights on, in the one column he couldn't revoke. The column was 3 lines deep when the first message came in. Nadine had the pencil against the paper, honest freight in one row, flour freight in the next, and the phone lit the wall a soft gray. She turned it over. A customer. Not a person canceling this time. A screenshot, forwarded by Marisol, who was awake at midnight and should not have been. It was the transparency page, her transparency page, except the numbers under the redaction bars were gone, and new numbers stood in their place. 14,000, sitting in a row that had never held it, formatted to look like her own hand had typed it there. She set the pencil down. Someone had taken her page, the one she wrote herself, published herself, at noon on the site of her own bakery, and rebuilt it. Same font. Same header, the word transparency across the top, like a joke she'd handed them. Below it, a line that read as a confession. Nadine opened the real site on the laptop. Her page was still there, untouched, redaction bars intact. Good. Then she looked at the screenshot again and understood the trick. Whoever made it didn't need to touch her site. They only needed a picture that looked like her site, moving from phone to phone, faster than anyone would think to check the source. She saved the fake to the same folder that held the fake bank screen. 2 forgeries now, in one drawer. At 1 in the morning, she called Marisol back. "Where did you get it?" "My cousin," from her church group chat. Marisol's voice was thick with sleep and something under the sleep. "Nadine, they're saying you already admitted it. That's what the message under it says. She posted it herself." "I posted the real one. This isn't it." "I know that. I know that." A pause. "But my cousin didn't." Nadine looked at the honest freight rates fanned across the counter. 6 letterheads, 6 small businesses that trusted her enough to sign. Go back to sleep. Don't forward anything. Not even to correct it. Correcting it just carries it further. She hung up and did not sleep either. By 6, the bakery smelled of butter, and the ovens were on. Because the ovens went on whether or not the world had decided she was a thief. She creamed sugar. She scaled flour. Her hands did the work while the rest of her waited for the phone, and the phone did not make her wait long. 2 standing orders canceled before 7, then a third. The wedding in October, 120 covers, booked since spring, pulled out in a text so polite it read like a sympathy card. Nadine refunded the deposit before she'd finished her coffee. She wrote the thank you note by hand. She had decided days ago that every cancellation would leave her books cleaner than it found them, and she held to it now the way you hold to a railing. At 8:30, Ruiz called from the credit union. "I need you to hear this from me," he said, and she knew before the sentence finished that it would be bad, because Ruiz led with the truth when the truth was heavy. "Northgate lost their permit this morning. Health department pulled it. Somebody filed on the spoiled pallet, the one from your account, back in the spring, the abused temps." Nadine sat down on the flour bin. "I filed nothing." "I know. That's the thing. The complaint's got your account number on it. 419. Your name in the filer line." A breath. "Northgate's dairy is done in this county, and their people are telling everyone who'll listen that Harper and Bloom torched them. The pallet. The $900 of ruined cream cheese from the first morning. The one she'd taken a written credit for and moved past. Someone had reached back 3 months, picked up a real grievance she'd chosen not to press, and pressed it in her name. Northgate wasn't even part of this. Northgate was a supplier who'd failed her once, twice, and now they were rubble with her fingerprints on the detonator. "That's 4 families," she said, mostly to herself. "Northgate's got, 6 drivers, a loading crew." "Nadine." Ruiz's voice dropped. "2 more of your cosigners called the union this morning. They're not worried anymore. They're scared. There's a picture going around now. You. And a page that says you took the flower money. It looks real." "It isn't. I believe you. I told them the account's clean. I told them I stamped every page myself." A silence stretched. "But belief isn't spreading as fast as the picture." "Ruiz," she said. "The complaint. Can you get me a copy of who filed it?" "Already asked. The health department's got your account number and a signature that isn't yours. A scrawl. Nobody checked it against anything." He paused. "It'll come apart under a real look, but a real look takes weeks, and Northgate's drivers don't eat in weeks." "No," she said. "They don't." She thanked him. She meant it. She put the phone face down on the flower bin and stood in her own kitchen and let herself feel the size of it for exactly 1 breath. And then she got up, because Marisol had come in, and there were still 40 loaves owed to people who had ordered bread and deserved to get it. She thought about the account number as she shaped the dough. 419. She'd read it aloud to a rep on the first morning of all this, standing at this same counter, furious about spoiled cream cheese. Now it sat on a health complaint she never wrote, wrecking a dairy she never wanted to wreck, in a hand that wasn't hers. Every true thing she'd ever put on paper was being fed back to her sharpened. The morning kept arriving in pieces. A reporter left a voicemail, not a real paper, one of the harbor blogs that ran on outrage, asking for comment on the Whitmore embezzlement. A produce vendor she'd bought from for 4 years didn't return her call. And at 11, Mr. Okafor came to the front door, and this time she let him in, because turning away an 81-year-old man on the worst morning of her year was a line she would not cross to protect her own composure. He didn't ask about the picture. He set a folded newspaper on the counter, a real one, local, open to a page she hadn't seen. Her bakery's name, in a paragraph about questions surrounding a Whitmore Foundation vendor. Not an accusation, legally. Just the shape of one. Printed, permanent, sitting in the boxes on porches all down her street. "My grandson showed me on the telephone this morning," Okafor said. "The other thing, the picture." He tapped the newspaper. "This one is worse. The picture, a person can say is a lie. This one has the paper's name on it. People believe the paper. I know. You will fix it." He said it like a fact he was reminding her of, not a hope. "But I came to say, the $2 for the lawyer. You use it. You do not carry this alone to be proud." She almost broke then. She didn't. She wrapped him 2 Melbreads and walked him to the door and watched him go slow down the block. And she thought about the 14 families and Northgate's drivers and Marisol's cousin's church group and the produce man who wouldn't call back. All of them small. All of them within 4 blocks. All of them now standing closer to the fire because of a lie built out of her own careful paperwork. That was the part that landed hardest. She had kept every receipt so she could sleep, and her enemy had reached into the drawer where she kept them and used the neatness itself, the coordination folder, the transparency page, the account number, as the tools of the frame. Her order had become his weapon. Minjay came at 1. He came in through the front, which he never did, and he had 2 men she recognized from the mansion gate waiting by the car at the curb, which he had never done at her bakery, not once. He looked like he hadn't slept, and under the coat his shoulders were set the way they set when he had already decided something and had come to inform, not to ask. "You've seen it," he said. "I've seen all of it. The page. Northgate." The paper, she kept her hands in the sink, kept washing the bowl that was already clean. It's the same person doing the same trick. He's not making new lies. He's picking up things I already have and turning them around. I know. Minjay's jaw worked. The internal firm confirmed the freight this morning. It's exactly what you'd expect from someone who signs before the board. He stopped. He did not say the name. Neither did she. The name sat between them on the counter like a third forgery. "Then we're close." she said. We're exposed. He crossed to her, lowered his voice, though there was no one but Marisol, and Marisol had the good sense to carry a tray to the back. Nadine, this has stopped being paper. Northgate's people are angry, and they're not careful. The blog wants a face. Your cosigners are frightened. That's a crowd, and crowds get used. He put a folder on the counter, a real one, thick. I need you to give me everything you've built, the rates, the comparisons, whatever you've been putting together at this counter at night. Let my firm hold it. Let my name carry the risk instead of yours. Her hands went still in the water. Récollière, she said, the Korean word for gathering, for collecting things in. She'd heard him use it on the phone with his men. You want to récollière my documents. I want them safe. I want you off the street until the vote, 7 days. His hand came to rest near hers on the counter's edge, not touching. Close the bakery for a week. Go somewhere with a gate. Let me put men on the block, so your people aren't standing in front of this alone. I can end the crowd part of this in a day. That's the part I know how to do. And there it was. The thing she'd felt coming since the van, since the mansion, since the first morning he'd offered to lean on the carrier. The protection that arrived as a cage. The love that solved her the way you solve a problem. If you put men on this block, she said slowly, what does my street look like tomorrow? 14 families who co-signed a community loan. And the answer to the lie about them is Kang Muscle standing on the corner. She turned to face him. You'd prove the whole thing. That's what they're saying about me. That I'm not a baker with a loan. I'm a front with a name behind me. You put your men out there, and you make it true. I make it safe. You make it his story. She dried her hands. He built a lie that says the only thing holding my bakery up is you. Every move you make with your name pays for his lie. Don't you see it? He wants you to protect me. That's the trap. The louder you shield me, the more it looks like there was something to shield. Min Jae's hand closed on the folder. So I do nothing while they burn you down. I didn't say nothing. I said not your way. She pointed at the thick folder under his hand. What's in there? He was quiet a beat too long. Then he opened it. Statements. Wire logs. 18 months of the internal firm's work, the freight padding circled in red, the carrier named, and clipped to the front, a single page she recognized as an internal memo, and on it, halfway down, a name. She didn't read it out loud. She'd earned the right not to, and so had he, but they both looked at it, and they both knew, and the not saying had finally worn as thin as paper held to a light. Your firm found him, she said. My firm is mine. Min Jae shut the folder. That's the problem you don't want to hear. If I bring this to the board, my auditors, my name, my finding, against a man whose family, do you know what the room hears? Not fraud. They hear the snow wolf clearing a rival before a vote he wants to win. They hear exactly what he's already telling them I am. His voice cracked at the edge, just once. He built the lie so that the truth, in my hands, looks like the lie. Every weapon I have makes it worse. So yes, I want your papers because your papers aren't mine. And I want you behind a gate because I cannot lose the vote and you in the same week. It was the most honest thing he'd said to her in 9 days, and it changed nothing, because the honest thing was still a request to disappear. You want my papers, she said, for the same reason he does, so they're not in my hands. That's not. It's not the same reason, but it's the same result. She heard her own voice go quiet, and quiet was worse than loud, and she watched him hear it too. If you hold my proof, it becomes Kang proof. Then it can't clear me. It can only clear me the way a boss clears his wife. That's not clean. Ruiz stamped my pages because they were mine. Evelyn gave me 5 minutes because I stood at that podium alone. The second your name is on the finding, I go back to being the woman who needs a man to prove she didn't steal. Min Jae stood very still. The two men waited at the curb. The ovens ticked as they cooled. So what do you want from me, he said. Not a challenge, almost a plea. I want you to let me be the one holding it when it falls. She swallowed. And you can't. Because everything about you says protect her, take it from her, put her behind glass. You've been fighting it since the first morning, and you keep losing to it. I watched you lose to it just now, walking in the front door with 2 men at the curb, like my bakery, is a scene you're securing. They're for the crowd. They're for you. She said it gently. So, You feel like you're doing something with your hands. I know that feeling. I've been doing arithmetic in the dark for 2 nights to feel it. She shook her head. But my hands and your hands can't hold the same thing right now. If they do, it's yours. And if it's yours, I'm nothing but the reason you did it. The kitchen was very quiet. He reached for her. Not the folder now, her, and she let him take her hand, and he looked at the ring on it, the plain band she'd worn through every oven-hot summer since the courthouse. Come to the penthouse tonight, he said. Not a gate, not glass, just where I can see you. 1 week, that's all I'm asking. Let me lose sleep in the same room as you. And she wanted to. That was the cruelty of it. She wanted to walk out of this burning block and up into the quiet high floor where no church group chat could reach, and no blog wanted her face, and the man she'd married would sit across from her, and it would be, for 1 week, not her problem to carry. Which was exactly why she couldn't. If I go up to that floor tonight, she said, I come down in a week to a bakery that closed itself the day it needed me most. I come down to Northgate's drivers still fired, my co-signers still scared, my street still believing the picture, and me, safe, rescued. The story writes itself. She hid at the top of the Kang Tower while it burned, and the man made it all go away. She drew a slow breath. That's his ending, Min-jae. Not mine. You'd let them think it, just to keep me safe. I'd let them think anything. His voice was low and flat and true. I've let rooms think worse of me than that to keep less than you. I know you have. She believed him, and it didn't move her, because being kept was still being kept, however tenderly. That's the whole difference between us. You'd trade the truth for my safety. I'd rather have the truth and the risk. Not because I'm braver, because the truth is the only thing on this street that's still mine. Mine is you alive and cleared. Cleared how? By whom? She pulled her hand back, slow, so it wouldn't land like a slap. You keep saying protect, I keep hearing decide. You decide the vote, you decide the crowd, you decide where I sleep, you decide who holds my proof. And every one of those decisions is you loving me. I know it is. But I did not build a bakery on my own name to become a decision somebody made to keep me safe. Min-jae's face did something she'd only seen once, the night at the pass when she first told him what his mother had said. It came apart, just slightly, at the seams. You're choosing the fire over the room with me in it. I'm choosing to be the one who put it out. She looked down at her own hand, at the band. And I can't do that as your wife tonight, because as your wife, everything I do is you doing it through me. That's the frame he built. And I won't wear it and fight it at the same time. She worked the ring off her finger. She did it slowly, and it caught at the knuckle the way it always had, and Min-jae watched her do it with the stillness of a man watching a thing he could not stop and could not survive. She set it on the counter, on the honest freight rates, on the 6 letterheads of 6 small businesses who had signed for her because she was Nadine Holloway and not because she was anyone's wife. This isn't leaving you, she said, and her voice held, barely. Understand me. This is me taking your name off the thing I'm about to do, so that when I do it, it's clean, so that no one in that room can say a Kang bought my innocence. When it's over, when it's mine, I'll put it back on. But I have to walk into the next 7 days as the woman on the door, not the woman on your arm. And if I can't tell the difference, then you'll learn it this week. She closed his fingers around the ring, gently, the way he'd closed hers around Okafor's $2 in her memory of a kinder day. Because you're going to do the hardest thing you've ever done, and it's not putting men on my block. It's keeping your name off my street while I clear it myself. You reopen your audit if you have to. You protect the vote, but you leave my proof in my hands, and you leave your muscle at your own door. He looked at the ring in his palm, a man who had never in his life been handed a thing he was not allowed to fix. 7 days, he said. It wasn't agreement. It was a man saying a number to keep from saying something worse. 7 days. He put the ring in his breast pocket, over the folder, over the name neither of them had spoken. He looked at her one more time, the whole of her, the flower on her forearms, the counter, the small burning kingdom she was refusing to leave, and then he walked out the front the way he'd come, and the 2 men fell in beside him, and the car pulled away from her curb and did not slow. Marisol came out from the back. She'd heard all of it, or enough of it. She looked at the bare place on Nadine's hand and said nothing. which was the kindest thing anyone had done for her all day. Nadine picked up the pencil. The column was still there, 3 lines deep. Honest freight in one row, flower freight in the next. 4 to 6 times, every florist, every time, the same carrier. She picked up where she'd stopped at midnight, and she added the 4th line, and the 5th, and her hand did not shake, though the light off the phone kept flickering with messages she would not open tonight. By 4, the block outside had gone quiet. No men on the corner, no car, just her street, believing a picture, and one lit window in a bakery that had refused to close. She worked until the arithmetic was done. Every impossible rate set beside an honest one. Every florist's real invoice matched to a real neighbor's real bill for the same short haul. She made 3 copies. She locked the originals in the leather portfolio, the way she'd locked the certified statements before the harbor benefit, and she slid it into the safe under the register. Then she sat with the bare hand in her lap and let herself feel it. Not the fear, she'd used the fear up hours ago, but the size of what she'd just done. She had taken off the one thing that could have made all of this stop. She had chosen the burning block. She had sent the only person with the power to end the crowd part of this back to his own door, with his hands tied by her. If she was wrong, she'd lose the bakery and the marriage in the same 7 days. If she was right, she'd walk into whatever room came next carrying proof that no one could call a gift. At 6, she locked the front. The newspaper Okafor had left was still on the counter, folded to the paragraph with her name in it. She didn't throw it out. She set it beside the phone, next to the 2 forgeries in the drawer, evidence of everything they'd tried, and she turned off the lights one by one until only the small one over the counter remained. Somewhere across the harbor, 7 days out now, a man behind a desk had spent the morning turning her own paperwork into a fire on her street and had watched her marriage crack under it and was, right now, in some office with the blinds down, deciding it had worked. He did not know she was still counting. He did not know the numbers were done and locked and hers alone. He did not know that the woman he'd tried to burn out of the story had just made herself impossible to buy, impossible to rescue, and, as of 1 hour ago, impossible to reach through her husband, because she'd handed her husband back his ring and kept the proof. Nadine Holloway stood alone in her dark bakery with a bare left hand and a locked safe, and for the first time in 9 days, no one, not Min Jae, not the crowd, not the man behind the desk, had any idea what she was going to do next. She turned off the last light. Outside, the block held its breath, and the picture kept moving from phone to phone, and none of it reached the one window that had already gone dark on purpose, because the woman inside it had stopped waiting to be saved and started, in the quiet, to build the thing that would end it. The knock came at 6, the courier's hour, but it was not the courier. Nadine slid the bolt back with flour on her knuckles and found Choi Yoon-ji on the step, coat buttoned wrong, a thumb drive pinched between 2 fingers like something that might bite. "I copied the wrong thing on purpose," Yoon-ji said, "so the log would show payroll." She stepped inside before Nadine could offer and set the drive on the steel counter, next to the leather portfolio, both hands flat beside it, as if to keep it from sliding away. "They put me back on the vendor file yesterday for an hour. A glitch, they called it. Somebody in IT rolled a permission set and forgot to strip mine." Nadine wiped her hands slow. "And you looked." "At everything I couldn't look at in April." Nadine plugged it into the old laptop by the register, and the 2 of them read standing up, shoulders almost touching, the screen throwing pale light on both their faces. It was worse than freight. The freight padding had been the door. Behind the door was a room. Every impossible invoice from the flower fund had been paid, but not to the florists. The florists got their honest rate. The difference bled off into a payee called Harbor Row Logistics, which paid Coastline Freight Partners, which paid a name with no storefront, which paid 11 people, in amounts under 10,000 each. "Under 10 so nothing files," Yoon-ji said. 11 checks instead of 1. Small enough each man can call it a fee. Nadine knew 2 of the names, a board member and a man who held a foundation chair and a vote on the port terminal. "He's buying the room," she said, and sat down on the stool because her legs told her to. The whole shape of it landed face up. $14,000 pinned to her name had never been the point. It was a splash of paint to make people look one way, while the real money walked out the other door and bought a vote to replace the one man who could stop it. Junseo, she said, first time she had said it out loud in her own kitchen. Yoonji flinched at the sound and then nodded. There's one more thing, she said, opening the last folder. Digital signatures. Every fragmented payment carried 2 approvals, one from the CFO's office, one from a second signer, the way the bylaws required for restricted funds. The second signature was the same on all of them. A short authorization block, a name, a timestamp. Kang Hee-suk. Nadine read it twice, the way she read everything twice. She's chaired that restricted line for 9 years, Yoonji said. Every one of these went past her desk before it moved. She could have signed without reading, Nadine offered, some habit of not wanting a thing to be as ugly as it was. Yoonji pulled up one more file, an email, April, from her own old address to a list that included the Flower Fund chair, subject line flat as a stone. Rate discrepancy, vendor freight, please advise. The 3 flagged invoices attached, a read receipt underneath, stamped and green. She opened it 2 minutes after I sent it, Yoonji said. Before any of this touched you, she read what I read and signed the next batch 11 days later. The ovens reached temperature and clicked. Neither woman moved to load them. Nadine understood then all the way down. Hee-suk had been warned. Not tricked, not handed a photo by a clever nephew and asked to believe it. Warned, in writing, with a read receipt, and had chosen, to keep signing, then chosen a face to hang it on. The name that would draw the eye and take the fall and, taking it, cut the tie between Min Jae and everyone who might have stood with him before the vote. She didn't believe it fast because she's foolish, Nadine said. She believed it fast because she needed a door and I was standing in one. Yoonji's hands had started to shake. If this drive is traced to me, I lose the payroll job. 3 of us had that access in April, and 1 already got walked out. Nadine closed the laptop halfway, gently, so the light came down. Then the drive stops here, she said. It never existed. You never came. You need it. It's the whole thing. I need what it points at. Nadine took the leather portfolio from the safe under the register and set it between them. I built this so I'd never have to say your name. 6 honest freight rates. 3 invoices anybody can pull from the florists. Arithmetic a 4th grader can check. I don't put you on a page. I put the trail on a page and let somebody with a badge walk it to the same room you just walked me to. Yoonji looked at the portfolio, then at the drive, then at her own shaking hands. Take the drive back, Nadine said. Wipe it. Go to work like it's Tuesday. When the independent people come, and they're coming, you answer what they ask and not one word more, and you were never here at 6 in the morning with your coat buttoned wrong. Yoonji laughed, a wet broken thing, and buttoned it right. At the door she stopped. Why protect me? Because you couldn't sleep for the right reason, Nadine said. Go. She watched the small car merge into harbor traffic and disappear, and then she loaded the ovens. Because the day you stop baking is the day the lie gets to say it was true. At 8 she called Evelyn Price. Evelyn answered on the second ring, already sharp. I called the credit union Monday like I said. Your Ruiz read me the stamps over the phone. I told 4 women at lunch that the picture on their screens was a fake and I'd stake my name on it. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Half of them wanted to know who made the fake. I told them I was asking the same question. A pause. The clink of a cup set down. You called to answer it. I called to hand you a way to answer it that doesn't need me or my marriage in the sentence. Go on. Nadine laid it out the way she'd laid the pages on the podium, one thing at a time. No name spoken she couldn't back. A restricted line. A 2-signature rule. Freight running 4 to 6 times the honest harbor rate. 6 businesses ready to show their own rates for the same short haul, on their own letterhead. And the money past the freight didn't sit still. It moved in pieces small enough to stay quiet, to a chain of shells, to a list of people, and some of those people had votes. You're describing, Evelyn said slowly, a purchase. I'm describing a pattern. I want people who aren't me and aren't a Kang to pull the thread. An outside firm, not the family's, not mine. Yours. The donor board can commission an audit of a restricted fund without asking permission from anyone whose signature is on it. The line went quiet long enough that Nadine heard her own ovens. The chair of that fund, Evelyn said, is the mother-in-law who couldn't repeat her own accusation, and the man who'd approved the invoices before they moved is the chief financial officer. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. I can read a bylaw. A breath. I can have an independent forensic firm under contract by end of day. I've wanted a reason to look at that fund for 2 years and never had the votes. Now I do, because half the board saw a woman slandered at their own benefit and they're ashamed. When they pull it, whatever they find, let it come from them. Not from me. It only holds if it isn't a Kang cleaning up a Kang or a baker clearing a baker. Strangers with a stamp. That, Evelyn said, is the smartest thing anyone said to me all year, and she hung up to make the call. Min-jae came at noon, through the back, alone. No men, no car she could see. He stood in the doorway with the light behind him and waited for her nod before stepping in, which he had never once done before. He put a single folded page on the counter, not the thick file. I resigned my vote, he said. This morning, in writing, to the board secretary, I won't sit the terminal decision. Nadine's hand stilled on the towel. That vote is the thing they've been trying to take from you for a month. They wanted a man who'd knock a rival out of the room to keep it. So I left the room. He said it without heat. I pulled my firm off it too. Mine was internal. Internal isn't clean enough for what this has to be. I gave everything we found to an independent house. Statements, wire logs, the freight. They answer to nobody at the foundation and nobody named Kang. Nadine looked at him a long moment. Evelyn's commissioning one from the donor side. Then they'll meet in the middle and check each other. Good. Something crossed his face. You went to Evelyn so it wouldn't be me. That's the part I couldn't do and you did anyway. The answer arrives without our fingerprints. I kept trying to carry it and every time I picked it up it got heavier because my hands were on it. He looked at her bare left hand on the towel and didn't reach for it. There's a name in all of it, he said quietly. You know the name. Longer than you think, Nadine said. Yoonji flagged his freight in April. He pulled her access 9 days later. His aunt signed every fragmented payment and opened the warning email 2 minutes after it landed and kept signing. She watched his jaw. Say it or don't. It doesn't need us anymore. It's on the drives of people who don't love anybody in this. Min-jae set both hands on the counter and let his head drop for the length of one breath. When he lifted it, his eyes were wet and steady. He's my cousin, he said. She raised him half the summers of my childhood. I keep waiting to be surprised and I'm not. He reset. I called the family meeting. Tomorrow night. Both houses. The overlapping board seats. I won't accuse anyone. I'll let the independent findings be read out loud by the people who found them. Then I let it do what it does. That's not how your world settles things. No, it's how yours does. You put it on the table and make them look. I watched you do it at the benefit, and I've thought about nothing else since. The family meeting was in the long dining room of the Kang house, the one Nadine had only ever entered through the service door. She came through the front this time, orange dress, portfolio under her arm, and the man at the gate checked a tablet and had to say, "Good evening, Mrs. Holloway," and she let him, because Holloway was the whole point. They were all there, board seats and family both. The overlap that had made the terminal vote worth killing for. Hae-suk at the far end, purse in her lap, chin up. Junso 2 seats down, a legal pad in front of him. He'd brought to look like a man with nothing to hide. Evelyn Price near the head, a slim folder squared to the table edge. 2 people Nadine didn't know, sat with laptops and lanyards from a firm whose name meant nothing to anyone in the room and would mean everything by the end of the hour. Min-jae did not take the head of the table. He sat along the side, with everyone else, and gave the head to the 2 strangers with the laptops. That alone changed the temperature in the room. The head of the table had always been where the answer came from. Tonight it came from people no one could buy, threaten, marry, or raise. I asked for this, Min-jae said. I'm not running it. They are. The senior forensic accountant, gray, unhurried, a woman who read like she'd read 1,000 of these, opened her laptop and began. She did not editorialize. A restricted fund, a 2-signature rule. The honest harbor freight rate for a short haul, then the flower fund's freight for the identical haul, and the room did the multiplication with her, 4 times, 6 times, every florist, every month. She read Harbor Row paying Coastline paying a payee with no address. 11 disbursements under 10,000. The 11 names. 2 men looked at the table. One stood, then didn't know why he'd stood, and sat back down. These 11, the accountant said, include 4 individuals holding votes on foundation-adjacent decisions, among them the port terminal matter scheduled for tomorrow. Silence with weight in it. Each fragmented payment carried 2 authorizations. She turned the laptop so the screen faced the length of the table. Everyone signed by the office of the Chief Financial Officer. A beat. And everyone countersigned by the chair of the Flower Fund. Nadine watched Junso's hand, very still on the legal pad, too still, the stillness of a man deciding whether stillness or motion would cost him less. There's a further item, the accountant said, and Evelyn slid the slim folder down to her. The chair received a written flag on 3 of these invoices in April, from internal accounting, discrepancies stated plainly. The message carries a read receipt time-stamped 2 minutes after delivery. 11 days later, the chair countersigned the next batch. The chin at the end of the table came down a half-inch. First movement out of high sook in 20 minutes. Junso spoke then, because a man who plans always has one more card and plays it a beat too late. This is a coordinated attack. Smooth, reasonable, the voice of a man who signs off before the board. My cousin is losing his position and needs a villain. He walked in a forensic firm he selected. I selected them, Evelyn said, without raising her voice. The donor board did. Not a Kang. I have the vote and the minutes. Shall I read them? And this woman, Junso pushed on, turning to Nadine, has every reason to. Don't. Minjae said it low, and it stopped the table like a hand on the chest. You pulled the bookkeeper's access 9 days after she flagged your freight. That's in their report too, with a timestamp. Talk about that. Junso's mouth opened. Nothing came. Nadine had not planned to speak. The whole design was to let the strangers carry it. But she stood, opened the leather portfolio, and laid the 6 honest letterheads down the center of the table one at a time, the way she'd laid pages on a podium, and the small sound of paper on wood was the only sound in the room. You built the whole thing out of my filing, she said. Thu Junso, but looking at Hyasuk. My coordination folder gave you the 14,000 number. My account number let you sink a dairy. My transparency page got dressed up into a confession. You used the fact that I keep everything, because a woman who keeps everything looks like a woman with something to hide, if you flip the light. She set down the last letterhead, but keeping everything is also how you get caught. I kept the honest number right next to your lie, and now they're on a table where everyone can do the math. She turned fully to Hyasuk then. You opened the email in April, Nadine said. 2 minutes, you knew before any of it touched me, and you decided I was the cheaper thing to burn. Her voice went quieter, which was worse. You could have stopped it with 1 word to an auditor. You chose a face instead, mine. The room waited. Hyasuk set her purse on the table. Her hands, when they came up, were not steady, and she was a woman who had spent 63 years keeping them steady. She looked at the read receipt still glowing on the turned screen, and understood, the way people like her understand last and all at once, that there was no version of the next hour where her chin stayed up. I signed them, she said. 2 board wives who'd heard her whisper at a benefit went very still. I read the boy's email and I signed the next ones anyway. Her voice cracked on. Anyway. And she pressed it flat. He said it was tidying. He said the freight always looked like that. He said the girl in accounting didn't understand shipping. She would not look at Nadine. And when the number needed somewhere to sit, I gave it to her. Because the sentence had a true end and she could not make herself walk to it. Because I was easy, Nadine said. Not cruel, just finishing the page. Because you were not one of us, Hyasuk said, and it came out small and old, and finally without any frost on it, the ugliest true thing anyone had said in the house, and saying it seemed to empty her. Nobody clapped. This wasn't the benefit. This was a family watching its own load-bearing wall crack down the middle, and there was no applause for that, only a woman who had chaired a fund for 9 years admitting she'd known. The forensic accountant closed her laptop, gently, a professional's punctuation. Junso stood. He did the arithmetic that men like him always do last, and worst, he counted the exits. "I have counsel," he said. "None of this is," and Min-jae said, "The accounts are already frozen," and Junso stopped with his hand on the back of his chair. "This morning," Min-jae said. The independent firm filed with the state before this dinner, not after. Harbor Row, Coastline, the Shells, your line. Frozen pending review. I didn't do it. I couldn't. And that's the point. The numbers did it." He looked at his cousin without triumph, which was harder to watch than triumph. "There are people from the Attorney General's financial unit outside. They agreed to let this be said in the room first, out of respect for the family. That's the only mercy in the building, Junso, and it runs out at the door. No guns, no raised voice, no Kang muscle on the block. Just a frozen account, a table of paper, and 2 people in lanyards who answered to a stranger's stranger." Junso walked to the door on his own feet, because the only dignity left to him was to not be carried, and it opened before he reached it, and closed behind him, and that was all. Nadine did not go back the next week, or the one after. Min-jae asked once, gently, at the bakery, and she said no, and told him why, and he listened without trying to fix it, which she noted, and filed, and did not yet reward. "I want 3 things before I put it back on," she said, and set her bare left hand flat on the counter so he'd know exactly what. It was, not promises, things I can read on paper. Name them. An independent fiscal counsel on the foundation, not your firm, not your aunt's chair. Outside eyes on every restricted fund, standing, permanent, with a stamp. So no woman ever again gets a number pinned to her because one signature went unread. It's being written. Evelyn chairs the selection. I have no seat on it. He said it like a man relieved to have less power. 2. Northgate. Their license died on a complaint filed under my account number with a signature that isn't mine. Those drivers don't eat while a lab compares handwriting for 6 weeks. The forgery's in the forensic file now. The county gets it fast. From the independent firm, not you, and the reinstatement reads. She was framed too. Not. The Kangs made a call. Done, and it'll read the way you said. 3. You keep your seat, she said. The leadership, all of it. His eyebrows moved. That's not a demand. That's a gift. It's a demand. You keep it, and you learn the difference you almost couldn't learn this month, in public where I can see it. Protecting me is not deciding for me. Every time you tried to put me behind glass, you did his work for him, made me a thing that hides behind the Kang name instead of the woman in her own doorway with her own receipts. If you'd fixed one piece of this with muscle, he'd have won, because he'd have been right about you. She let it land. Be the man who resigned a vote rather than knock a rival out of the room. That man I can stand next to, the fixer I couldn't. Min-jae was quiet a long moment. Then he took the courthouse band out of his breast pocket. It had ridden there through all of it, over the file, over the name, and set it on the 6 honest letterheads, exactly where she'd left it, and slid it the last few inches toward her, and stopped. When it's yours, he said, giving her own words back. Not from me, when you decide. She looked at the ring on the paper. Not tonight, but she left it there instead of in a drawer, and that was its own paper trail. The expansion loan closed in the fall, through the credit union, Ruiz walking the paperwork across the counter himself. 14 families had co-signed the first one, 19 co-signed this one, because the truth had finally caught up and passed the lie on the church roads it had been losing on for a month. Mr. Okafor signed with a shaking hand and put another $2 for the next lawyer, God forbid, in the tip jar next to the first 2. The second storefront was 3 doors down, brick, a bigger oven, a window wide enough for the street to watch cakes get built. She hung the community loan certificate on the new wall the day the drywall dried, 19 names on it, before a single shelf. Northgate's license came back with a line in the county record that read, in the flat language of clerks, that the complaint had been filed fraudulently under a stolen account number and that both the vendor and the complainant of record, Harper and Bloom, were cleared. The drivers went back to work. One started buying seed bread on Fridays. Choi Eun-ji kept her job. She answered what the independent firm asked and not one word more. Her name never reached a headline, And 3 months later, the new fiscal council hired her out of payroll and back into the work she was good at, with a badge nobody could pull on 9 days' notice ever again. She texted Nadine the day it printed. Slept 8 hours. Nadine saved it in the folder where she'd once saved the forgeries, then deleted the forgeries. Hae-suk was not charged. The scheme was Junso's engine and Junso's freeze, and Junso's walk to the door. What happened to Hae-suk happened in the smaller economy, the one that keeps no ledger a state can read. 4 women who used to lunch with her stopped calling, and the front table at the next benefit had an empty chair at the head that no one moved to fill. She resigned the flower fund chair before the council could vote her out, which fooled no one. The only card she had left played a beat too late, the way her nephew had played his. She came to the bakery once, near winter, and stood at the counter and did not sit, and said, "The seed bread." And could not finish it. Nadine gave her 2 loaves of honey bread and let her pay for them, because charity would have been another way of deciding for her, and Nadine was done deciding for people. Hae-suk looked at the ring back on Nadine's left hand, understood something, and left. It was the closest thing to an apology either of them would ever hold, and it was enough, because it had to be. They renewed the vows in the bakery. Not the mansion, not a ballroom, not anywhere with a service door. The old storefront, after close, ovens off and ticking as they cooled, 40 folding chairs, Aunt Ray's van out front with the heater running for the elders, Marisol crying before anyone said a word, Mr. Okafor in the second row in a tie the color of tangerine, because he'd asked what color the apron was and matched it. Evelyn came. Ruiz came. Yoonji sat in the back. Nadine wore the orange dress. Min-jae wore the dark suit, the dragon over the collar. And when it came his turn, he read nothing written down. "I spent a month trying to keep you safe," he said. "And every safe place I built was a smaller room. I'm done building you rooms." He took her left hand, the ring already on it, put there by her own decision 3 weeks before, in an empty kitchen at midnight with no one watching, which was how she'd wanted it and the only way it could have counted. "I'll never again decide the thing that's yours to decide, and I'll never again make you quieter to make you safe. I kept every receipt so I'd never disappear," she said. "You almost made me disappear to keep me. Don't." She closed his hand around the promise the way she'd closed it around the ring, the way Okafor had closed her hand around $2, the whole chain of hands folding shut. "Keep me loud." "Loud," he said. Outside, the block did not hold its breath. It was noisy and warm, and full of people who knew exactly whose name was on the door, and the picture that had once traveled from phone to phone had stopped moving, because there was nowhere left for it to go that didn't already know the truth. Nadine Holloway had built a paper wall 1 page at a time, then leaned the whole rotten house against it, and the wall had held. A woman who keeps every receipt cannot be erased. She can only be finally, completely read. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever built something with your own name on it? A business, a reputation, a loan you signed alone, only to watch someone powerful try to rewrite the story behind your back? When a photo, a rumor, or a forged number was used to make you the guilty one, did you stay quiet to keep the peace? Or did you lay your receipts on the table and ask your accuser to repeat it to your face? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about truth, dignity, and justice, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.